Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Why do some young women marry men who are significantly older than them? Rosanna Galliano's story wasn't the only one. A young college student married a man her father's age after falling in love with him. But this union's tragic demise stunned Argentina as a whole and became one of the most talked about subjects in the media. Who was Galliano? Rosanna? On November 24, 1978, Rosanna Edith Rodriguez Galliano was born in a Buenos Aires suburb. She was the youngest of Reynaldo Galliano and Graciela Rodriguez's 4 children. Rosanna grew up with her sister Monica and her older brothers Oscar and Gustavo. From their early years, the siblings had a close bond. Her father was a skilled mechanic who ran a small auto repair business. Her mother had previously taught at a nearby high school, but she chose to quit teaching after having children in order to focus on taking care of the family and raising her children. According to everyone who knew Rosanna personally, she was a happy, vivacious, and outgoing young lady. She participated actively in dance, had lots of friends at school, and was talented at drawing. One day, she hoped to pursue a career in interior design or art. After graduating, she enrolled at Argentina's National University of the Arts because she was determined to achieve her goals. If José Arce hadn't entered her life, she probably would have accomplished everything she set out to do. José Jacinto Arce brought his vintage car with a rather complex problem to Reynaldo Galliano's workshop in 2001. The skilled mechanic accepted the assignment. Rosanna stopped by her father's workshop to deliver lunch that her mother had made while they talked about the specifics and price of the repair. Rosanna immediately drew Arce's attention with her youthful beauty, big eyes, and bright smile. The man started going to the workshop every day, ostensibly to monitor the work and see how the repair was going. In the hopes of seeing Rosanna again, he always arrived during lunch. It's now necessary to give some background information about José Arce and his troubled past. Jacinto Pedro Arce and Elsa Dorotea Aguilar welcomed him into the world on November 28, 1948, in the Famela department in the northwest of the Argentine province of Tucumán. His mother's side of the family was Greek, and his father's was Italian. He spent a large portion of his early years in Naples and on the Greek island of Crete. According to some accounts, José Arce's father had strong connections to organized crime and accumulated a sizable fortune through illicit means. Jacinto's unexplained death in the middle of the 1980s suggested a targeted attack, perhaps planned by someone with a purpose. José was incarcerated for smuggling illegal substances at the time of his father's passing. José and his mother resided in the United States until 1996, but he was in danger of being deported for breaking immigration laws. But Elsa, his mother, became a citizen of the United States, purchased a house in Boston, and stayed there with her sister. José had been married twice, but he didn't stay in touch with either of his previous spouses or their kids. He disliked discussing his past and preferred to keep his marriages, criminal history, dubious family background, and the mystery surrounding his father's death a secret. José, who was over 50 at the time of the events detailed here, had 3 expensive cars, multiple properties in Buenos Aires and its suburbs, and a fashionable, opulent wardrobe. He was skilled at projecting an air of sophistication and charm that made an impression on others. Young Rosanna was soon won over by his charm. After exchanging phone numbers, Rosanna asked her out on a date a week later. Rosanna didn't fully comprehend how deeply she had fallen for a man who could have easily been her father, because their relationship developed so quickly. Rosanna's parents were initially unaware of the couple's covert relationship. Her older sister, Monica, was immediately concerned when she told her, but she also pledged to keep it a secret from their parents for the time being. José showed up at the Galliano home 6 months later to formally request Rosanna's hand in marriage. Rosanna was only 22 years old at this point, and he was 52. The proposal surprised her parents, who were unsure of how to respond. Graciela, Rosanna's mother, drew her aside and asked her bluntly if she really intended to wed this much older man. After a brief hesitancy, Rosanna informed her mother that she was prepared to marry José because she loved him, but Graciela had a feeling something wasn't quite right. Her daughter looked nervous, angry, and even afraid. José most likely exerted pressure on Rosanna to agree to his proposal. Jose, however, asserted that their 30-year age difference did not deter their love or prevent them from beginning a family. 7 months after first meeting, the couple got married at the end of 2001, and Rosanna moved in with Jose. Everything appeared to be ideal at first. Jose seemed to truly love and care for his young bride. He planned a lavish wedding reception, bought Rosanna pricey presents, and planned a romantic honeymoon by the sea. The spiral downward. Geronimo, a son, was Rosanna and Jose's first child together, born in 2002. However, significant issues started to surface in the family after the birth of their child. By controlling Rosanna's every action, Jose effectively imprisoned her in their house. He kept tabs on all of her phone conversations, and she was prohibited from communicating with her own family members as well as friends. Rosanna initially made an effort to hide her problems from her family. She hoped the problems in her marriage would be resolved and felt she could manage the situation on her own. However, the situation only got worse over time. Jose showed himself to be a controlling tyrant who was prone to violent outbursts and was jealous and cunning. In addition to verbally abusing Rosanna and disparaging her family, he even implied that she should be thankful for everything he did for her by saying that he had chosen her out of the trash. As Rosanna's fear of her husband grew, she made every effort to avoid upsetting him. In order to prevent upsetting Jose, she was prepared to forgo communication with her parents, brothers, and sister. However, he didn't really need an excuse to lose his temper or turn violent. The emotional abuse eventually became physical. Jose started using his fists to strike out nearly daily, and it was evident that he relished the authority it bestowed upon him. Rosanna was always afraid, but she was at a loss for what to do. She foolishly thought that her husband would stop torturing her, and that the issue would eventually resolve itself. However, things only got worse. Jose had a number of weapons, including 2 handguns that he liked to show off to visitors and kept loaded at all times. With these guns, he regularly threatened Rosanna, saying that if she ever tried to argue with him or leave him, he would use them. Her brother Oscar happened to be an unintentional witness to one of these scenes one day. Oscar was concerned and had dropped in without warning after failing to get through to Rosanna. He went through the front door, which was unlocked, and discovered that the couple was having a heated argument. Jose slapped Rosanna several times while insulting her and her family before drawing his gun. He held the barrel to her face, took her by the hair, and jokingly mentioned how much he would like to pull the trigger. Oscar stepped in right away to protect his sister by putting himself between her and Jose. He insisted that Rosanna gather her belongings, take the child, and accompany him to their parents' house, threatening to call the police. Rosanna surprisingly declined, insisting that he not meddle in their marital issues. She asked Oscar to leave and told him that she would remain with her husband. Despite his shock, Oscar didn't continue to argue. Though he wasn't quite ready to go, he left the house in silence. He was concerned that Jose would not carry out his violent threats and that Rosanna was safe. Oscar waited outside, out of sight, and used his phone to take a few pictures. Even though early 2000s phones had far from ideal cameras, it was evident from the photos that Jose was brandishing a gun and aiming it at his frightened wife, who was sitting on the floor. Only after Jose had locked himself in his study and put the weapon away did Oscar depart. Rosanna and Jose welcomed their second child, a son named Neuan, in 2006, despite the constant nightmares at home. In an effort to preserve their marriage and provide her sons with a 2-parent home free from poverty, Rosanna made every effort to patch up her relationship with her husband. However, things did not change. Jose remained as vicious and violent as ever. Jose and his mother, Elsa, had a very close relationship and were always there for him. Although Elsa was a resident of the United States, she regularly visited Argentina and would spend months or even weeks at her son's home. These visits were a humiliating ordeal for Rosanna, a continual trial. She had to take care of her husband's aging mother while putting up with daily taunts and criticism. Rosanna, in Elsa's opinion, was a bad housewife, a bad mother, and a bad housekeeper. She would frequently claim that Rosanna was worthless, that she lived in his home, that she was dependent on him for everything, and that she didn't deserve her son. Elsa had seen Jose's violent outbursts against Rosanna several times, but she had never stepped in to stop them. Rather, she accused Rosanna of inciting him and threatened to take away her sons and ensure she would never see them again if Rosanna ever filed for divorce. Elsa made herself known, even when she wasn't there in person. She stayed in close communication with Jose, asking about everything that went on in the home, giving him advice, and urging him to make sure Rosanna didn't get away with anything. Jose viciously assaulted Rosanna once more in the middle of 2006, when Nehuan was only 7 months old, breaking her nose and multiple ribs. Rosanna finally made the decision to report the abuse to the authorities after this violent assault, which was the tipping point for her. She requested a forensic examination after formally reporting domestic violence, and the results showed a history of systematic physical abuse, including numerous bruises and injuries at different stages of healing. Interestingly, Jose was able to persuade Rosanna to give him another chance, and the case was ultimately dismissed. She still shared a home with him, but this time she began to confide in her sister, Monica. Rosanna called Monica whenever something happened to let her know what had happened, and she even began sending her messages with the threats she had received from Jose and Elsa. For more than a year, Monica recorded these discussions in a journal. Rosanna took her 2 sons and spent days hiding out at her sister's house as she repeatedly ran away from her husband's abuse. At least 5 times during these escape attempts, she was forced to return to Jose after he threatened to kill her or take her sons away, according to close family members. Rosanna filed for divorce at the end of 2007 and was successful in getting a court order that barred Jose from being around her and their sons. Jose, however, filed a countersuit, asserting his right to see his sons. For these visits, the court set a schedule that had to be adhered to. They agreed that Jose's vacant country home would be the venue for the meetings. Rosanna was afraid of Jose and felt safer with someone who could step in if something went wrong, so she frequently went to these meetings with her brother Asghar. Rosanna became friends with Daniel Gonzalez, a local gardener, and told him about her terrifying ordeal. Daniel was sympathetic and saw multiple instances in which Jose used derogatory language to publicly humiliate Rosanna. He would subsequently testify in court regarding these incidents. Rosanna met Oscar Lugo, a young man, in August 2007. They soon developed a romantic relationship. Despite being only 3 years Rosanna's senior, Oscar was considerate, kind, and perceptive. He took to her sons right away. After her divorce from Jose was finalized, the couple even began organizing their wedding, giving the impression that she had finally found the right partner. Jose, however, persisted in keeping a close eye on his still lawful wife. When physical violence and threats failed to control her, he turned to bribery. Rosanna adamantly refused his offer of a car in exchange for her return. Jose, who remained in close contact with his mother, confided in her out of desperation that he intended to hire someone else to kill Rosanna. Elsa not only endorsed the concept but also gave her son financial support, sending him a sizable sum of money to commit the crime. Jose had to come up with a thorough plan and locate a hitman for almost 2 months. Rosanna, her sons, and her sister Monica visited Jose at the country house on January 16, 2008, as part of a planned visit. Jose left the women in the house that day to wait for the boys to return after taking them for a walk. Jose sent a message around 9 p.m. stating that he was taking Geronimo, one of the boys, to the hospital because he was feeling ill and had a fever. Rosanna became worried and texted Jose multiple times in an attempt to find out what was happening, but he didn't pick up. Rosanna gave Rosanna a call at around 10 o'clock. The phone call would prove to be a fatal trap. Rosanna would go outside to get a signal, and he knew that cell reception was bad in the house. Monica hurried to investigate after hearing 6 gunshots as soon as she left the house. On the vacant lot next door, she noticed a shadowy figure slipping behind a fence. She discovered Rosanna bleeding profusely on the ground a short while later. Monica dashed back inside to retrieve her phone, but she was unable to immediately connect to emergency services. She called her brother in a panic, told him what was happening, and urged him to call the police and emergency services right away. Rosanna had no chance of surviving after 4 of the 6 shots that were fired struck their target, striking her in the neck and chest. She had already stopped exhibiting any signs of life by the time emergency personnel arrived. Doctors were only able to confirm Rosanna's death after she bled out in a matter of minutes. Rosanna's close relatives were all certain of the person responsible for this terrible incident. When Jose was questioned that same night, he pretended to be shocked and denied any role in his wife's passing. He was released pending additional investigation because he had an alibi. Rosanna's family feared that Jose would just pay someone off and get away with it if there was no publicity, so they chose to take the case to the media. The publicity, though, could have backfired. Rosanna actively conducted interviews and engaged prestigious attorneys, damaging Rosanna's and her family's reputations. He asserted that Rosanna had cheated on him by having multiple lovers, all of whom might have desired her death. He even charged Monica with the murder, claiming that she had called their brother instead of helping her dying sister. However, Monica's potential involvement in the shooting was thoroughly investigated. Ballistic tests showed that the shots had been fired from a .45 caliber pistol, which would have been difficult for a thin woman like Monica to handle, and there were no signs of gunpowder residue on her hands or clothing. Jose went on to enumerate Rosanna's alleged suitors, which included the gardener and a number of other men from their domestic staff. At first, the investigation proceeded slowly, but with the help of multiple witnesses' testimonies, Monica's thorough diary, and images on Oscar's phone, authorities were able to prove that Jose had been physically abusing his wife for years. Subsequent inquiries turned up multiple instances in which Rosanna had reported domestic abuse to the police, accompanied by medical documentation. Jose's mother Elsa took care of the couple's sons while he was in custody, even though he was the main suspect in his wife's death. The Galliano family was not allowed to see the boys for almost half a year. Graciela and Monica were denied custody, but were given visitation rights only in the fall of 2008. Oscar, who had pictures of Jose pointing a gun at his sister on his phone, was put under witness protection and started getting anonymous threats. He was fitted with a tracking device so that authorities could keep tabs on his movements. When he was abducted by two unidentified attackers a few months later, brutally beaten and abandoned to perish in a secluded location outside the city, this gadget saved his life. He was found in time and taken to the hospital with the help of the tracking signal. A year after Rosanna's passing, Jose was taken into custody and accused of assault, abuse, and planning a crime. Despite a lot of work, the hired criminal's identity was never revealed. Paulo and Gabrielle, Jose's cousins, were detained as possible accomplices, though. They were released in April 2009 after the charges against them were dropped for lack of evidence. The main suspect's trial was repeatedly postponed, raising suspicions that the case was being purposefully delayed. It was discovered during this period that Jose's mother, Elsa, had sent a sizable amount of money to her son just prior to the catastrophe. The money was allegedly intended to buy Rosanna and her sons a house to live in following the divorce. But the money vanished from the account a few weeks prior to the crime, and the property was never bought. Elsa was also taken into custody as an accomplice, but she and her son were soon freed on bond. More than 5 years after Rosanna's passing, the trial finally started in the spring of 2013. Since the identity of the offender was still a mystery, Jose and Elsa were the only defendants. Jose had a stroke and was admitted to the hospital just 1 week into the trial, and Elsa was put under house arrest. Geronimo and Nehuan stayed with the Ars family during this period. When the trial recommenced 6 months later, Jose and Elsa were both found guilty in spite of the defense team's best efforts. Jose's refusal to divide property and custody of his sons during the divorce was determined to be the main driving force. At least Elsa knew about her son's plans and encouraged him. The defendants tried to damage Rosanna's reputation during the trial by making multiple, later proven false accusations against her. Ajika and Elsa were found guilty on all counts and given a life sentence in prison in November 2013. But in 2015, Jose's sentence was reduced to house arrest after suffering another severe stroke, and Elsa's due to her advanced age. Geronimo and Nehuan were placed in the custody of Elsa's younger sister during this time. Rosanna's family, the Gallianos, did not obtain legal visitation rights with the boys until early 2017. However, by that time, both sons were teenagers who had spent years apart from their maternal relatives. The boys no longer felt a bond with Rosanna's parents, siblings, and extended family, so their reunions with them were chilly and aloof. Jose died on October 24, 2018, 1 month before his 70th birthday after suffering another stroke. When Elsa passed away the following year at the age of 91, the custody dispute was rekindled. Geronimo didn't want to move or change schools, so he stayed with Elsa's sister, since he was only a few months away from turning 18. However, a court order placed Nahuen in the custody of his Aunt Monica. After experiencing years of trauma and loss, Geronimo and Nahuen both battled persistent anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. Geronimo decided to leave his maternal relatives, whom he considered to be strangers, and relocate to a different city as he grew older. Until he reached adulthood, Nahuen lived with his Aunt Monica, but their relationship remained formal and aloof. He separated from Monica and other family members on his mother's side after graduating high school and moving into a college dorm. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments what part of this story shocked you the most. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Today we'll talk about what happened in Maine in 2016. While her husband Luke was shopping at Walmart, Valerie Tiemann, 34, vanished from the parking lot. There was no sign of Valerie when he got back in the car. The police opened an investigation as soon as they heard about Valerie's disappearance, but it soon took a surprising turn. Sarah Jean Sampsarmanen and Jean Allharman welcomed Valerie Jo Harmanen into the world on December 3, 1981, in Salem, Virginia. Valerie attended Hampton Park Christian School and graduated in 2000. She was born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina. She graduated from Bob Jones University with a degree in cosmetology. She was well known for her gregarious demeanor and warm smile. Valerie was well known for her passion for speech and theater. She played the flute and piano and loved music. Valerie worked in pageants, spas, and salons using her cosmetology skills. She helped people look and feel their best in order to support them. Valerie had been seeing a man named Matt Guccio. When Valerie was around 22, they met through a mutual friend. In many ways, they were too dissimilar. Matt was more reserved, but Valerie was gregarious and happy. However, they did not find this difference problematic. Valerie and Matt were married in 2004. They moved into Matt's tiny house after the honeymoon, and while everything was great at first, Valerie's parents started to notice behavioral changes over time. Matt was very frugal with his money. To have some personal savings, Valerie had to open a different bank account. Matt's behavior changed more and more over time. He attempted to exert total control over Valerie's life and held her responsible for all of his and their family's issues. She endured a great deal of emotional suffering and a lot of things, but patience has its limits. Matt and Valerie got divorced 10 years later. Valerie wanted a new chapter in her life, and Luke Tiemann opened it. He helped Valerie move past her past issues. Luke spent 10 years in the army. Valerie saw him as a trustworthy man who cared for her family while he was in Iraq and Afghanistan. Valerie was starting to look happy again. Valerie was once again smiling and full of joy as she had been 10 years before. Luke and Valerie entered into marriage on June 6, 2014. They relocated to the Fairfield home of Luke's parents. Luke was living in Maine at the time, and Valerie's parents were in South Carolina. After visiting Valerie's family in South Carolina, Luke and Valerie returned to Maine in August 2016. The final text message exchange between Valerie's mother, Sarah Jean Harman, and her daughter took place on August 18, 2016. Luke was spotted with a woman he had begun chatting with on Facebook a week prior, on August 24, 2016. This woman and Luke Tiemann had sex on the evening of August 24, 2016, and it appears that Valerie learned of it that evening. In 5 hours, Valerie called Luke 31 times. A mutual friend of Luke and Valerie reached out to the latter through Messenger on August 26, 2016. Valerie was told by a friend that Luke was getting sucked into other women and claiming that they were no longer together. Valerie replied in multiple messages that, although it was heartbreaking, everything would work out because God has a timing and he would never find a better woman than her. She also said that he had lost her the following month in 2016. Luke Tiemann moved into the home of a woman with whom he was having an affair and told Valerie, his wife, that Valerie had fled with another man. Every week, Valerie would call her parents in South Carolina, but now they were unable to get in touch with their daughter for over a week. They couldn't get in touch with their daughter because she didn't answer their calls or texts. Luke was decided by Alan Harman and Sarah Harman. Speak with Luke. They texted him to inquire about his and Luke's well-being. The following day, Luke replied, "We are good. Thank you, love her so much." Another 13 days have passed, but Valerie's parents still can't contact Luso. They call Luke's father. They were shocked by the man's response. Valerie had been missing for approximately 2 weeks, according to Luke's father. In addition, he consulted Valerie's parents about what to do with her belongings. After that, Luke Tiemann was questioned about why he hadn't informed them about their daughter. "I was waiting for her to get in touch with you because," Tiemann said, "I never speak poorly of her. I still adore each of you." Luke said Valerie had run off with another man, and he thought she would tell her parents that they had broken up. Sarah Jean and Alan knew it wasn't true. It was a far cry from their daughter's behavior. Valerie couldn't have done that, they were certain. They also thought she would have called them, since she was aware of their concerns. Alan reported a missing person to the Fairfield Police Department the following day, September 9, 2016. Investigators began by visiting Valerie's parents, who were the residents of Luco Tiemann. They spoke with Laurel Tiemann, who told them she didn't know where they were. Since Valerie was, the detectives left without finding out where Laurel Tiemann's were. Because of Laurel Tiemann's domineering behavior, Valerie's parents felt it was difficult for their daughter to share a home with her. Laurel packed everything she owned in trash bags after Valerie was gone for 2 weeks. It was a clear representation of Laurel's daughter-in-law. She wasn't worried about Valerie at all. All she wanted to do was get rid of her things so they wouldn't occupy space in the house. The police meant to find Luke Tiemann and ask him a few questions, but they couldn't locate him. He didn't show up at his home, and his parents said they didn't know where their son might be. However, 5 days after Valerie's disappearance, Luke took the initiative to call the police himself. He claimed to have heard that the detectives were interested in speaking with him. When and under what circumstances he had last seen Valerie was one of the questions the detectives asked him. About 2 weeks ago, he and Valerie went to the local Walmart to buy some food, and he said that the response was really strange. While he went shopping, Valerie remained in the car in the parking lot. He finished his shopping and went back to the car, but Valerie was gone. According to Luke, he tried to find Valerie and promised to take her back by calling and texting her after leaving the store and realizing she wasn't there. Luke also disclosed that Valerie and he were approaching the end of their marriage. He claims that Valerie once brought up another man in a conversation, and he thought she was having an affair with him. Luke didn't know the man's name or where he lived. He believed Valerie had fled with him. The police appealed to the public through the media because Valerie's family was not aware of Luco Tiemann's existence. They asked anyone who has seen Valerie in the past few weeks to report it to detectives by posting a picture of her. From Valerie's disappearance from the Walmart parking lot to the disposal of her possessions in garbage bags, the whole story seemed strange. The fact that Luke Tiemann did nothing to find his wife was another intriguing element of the narrative. He might have been too preoccupied with another woman. On the day that Valerie vanished, investigators visited Luke Walmart, where Luke and Valerie were. There were surveillance cameras inside the building as well as outside. Consequently, it was simple to verify Luke's story. Examining the CCTV footage took the investigators over an hour. They were in for a surprise. Lucy did not see Valerie or Luke Tiemann in any of the recordings. Luchin implied that Luch had lied to the police. The police were now aware that he was concealing something. The investigators chose to have a face-to-face conversation with Luke. They did not, however, reveal all of the information they possessed. They thought he would embellish or alter some of Lucci's testimony. It was no secret that Lucci was seeing another woman, Billie Jo Goodman. The fact that he was unfaithful to Valerie was not denied by him. He claimed that his relationship with Billie Jo was an effort to move on from Valerie's breakup. She was in a number of failed relationships. She thought she could start a future with Luke Tiemann when they first met. Another question now faced the investigators. Is it possible that Valerie acted as a mediator between Lucas and Billie Jo? Maybe these two chose to get rid of everything that might interfere with their plans in order to begin a new life. Billie Jo spoke with the police. She thought Louis had already separated from his wife. She claimed to investigators that she had no knowledge of Valerie Tiemann's disappearance. Meanwhile, one of the residents gave the police a tip. In one of the parking lots, the man had discovered a driver's license in the grass. The driver's license that was discovered belonged to Valerie, and this parking lot was adjacent to Billie Jo's house. Many people were suspicious because Valerie's driver's license was located close to her husband's new girlfriend's home. Few people think that on September 19, 2016, 10 days after Valerie's father, Alan, reported her missing to the police, Valerie fled with another man, leaving behind all of her possessions and discarding her documents. Luke Tiemann spoke with the news center Maine about the police. When he got back, Valerie wasn't in the car. He told reporters about Walmart. He didn't know Walmart had security camera footage. His story was not supported by footage. Without a doubt, after hearing Luke Tiemann's words and seeing his actions, each of you has drawn your own conclusions. On September 20, 2016, the following day, this case took a surprising turn. A.S. Luke warrant was obtained by detectives for the Fairfield property owned by Luke's parents. This was, after all, Valerie's last known residence. During the search, police dogs that are trained to detect human remains participated. His stream, and the land lot were to be checked. After searching the woods behind the house for about 5 minutes, a police dog discovered something. As the officer dug through the dirt with his hand, he noticed a shoe protruding from the ground. He was joined by other officers, who also began digging while wearing gloves. They discovered the body of a woman, wrapped in a blanket, and buried it with a number of odd items. These items included a package of sweet tarts, a bag of potato chips, a bottle of Gucci perfume, a flannel shirt, a handwritten note, a Mason note, and a wedding ring, an item that was not found until the evidence was being packaged for trial. While handling the con jar, Sergeant Scott Bryant, chief of Maine's evidence response team, testified that he discovered the ring. There were twigs and flower stems made of dirt in the mason jar. I knew there was something heavy in the envelope when I heard a thud. According to Bryant, it was still unknown if the ring belonged to a man or a woman. But according to Bryant, the discovered ring was significantly larger than his own wedding band. For my sole happiness, the police read, the soiled and soiled handwritten note that was discovered with Valerie's body. Joy, you will always bloom. I love you, Valerie, the note read. May you rest in peace with Jesus in my heart, Joy. I am looking forward to seeing you again. T. Lucio Bear, signed Lucy Bear. Tiemann Lucy Bear Sirs claimed in a police recording that he gave himself the nickname Lucy Bear and used it to sign a number of other notes discovered in Valerie's purse throughout the course of the investigation. Valerie's death was connected to all of Lucy's possessions. They took the body. For an autopsy and identification, the body was brought to the forensic medical examiner's office. Unfortunately, the body discovered behind the Tiemann family home actually belonged to their daughter, V. Lucre, so Jean and Alan Harmon had to worry about the worst thing their parents could hear. In addition to Valerie and Luke, the house was also occupied by his parents and younger brother Sam. Detectives discovered Sam's landscaping tools in the barn. Valerie discovered a contraband device in the same barn where Sam had dug up the burial site using these tools. Detectives soon discovered that Sam, Luke's younger brother, had engaged in illicit substance use. When Valerie visited her parents in South Carolina, she told them she used illegal drugs, which led the police to look into whether Sam Tiemann was involved in Valerie's death. When investigators searched Valerie's parents' bedroom, they found a .45 caliber handgun that Luke Tiemann had bought in 2015. Luke's parents told investigators they were unaware Valerie was buried close to their home. It's difficult to accept that this was the case, of course. Around the same time that Valerie was located, investigators found Luke and Billy Joe, his new friend. Luke Tiemann was taken into custody by investigators and taken to the police station to be questioned. He told the investigators Valerie had used illegal drugs and had overdosed and died nearly 25 months ago on August 25th. It is alleged that Lucien did not want Valerie's parents to be aware of their daughter's illicit drug use. He didn't tell them anything because of this. Since she was already dead, her husband knew that 911 would not be able to help her, so he chose not to call. As an alternative, he left Valerie in bed until nightfall. When it grew dark, he wrapped her in a blanket, left a note outside, and led her to the house in the woods. After that, Luke Clary was buried in a hole that Luke and his brother Sam had dug. Valerie had no physical wounds prior to her passing, according to Luke. Luke Tiemann was lying, though, according to the autopsy results, which showed that Valerie's blood had no traces of illegal substances, only traces of prescription medications were found. It wasn't the most unexpected thing, though. 2 gunshot wounds to Valerie's head and neck were the cause of her death. According to the results of the ballistics analysis, investigators used a .45 caliber handgun to fire the bullets that were taken from Valerie's body. When investigators searched Luke's parents' bedroom, they discovered the same gun. He claimed to have purchased a Buga Gohei gun for his father approximately a year ago, but he did not deny owning one. He asserted that he was unaware that Valerie had a loop shot. Valerie's age is 32. Luke Timen was charged with the murder of Valerie Timen, 34. The police were unable to uncover any proof that her brother was involved in Valerie Timen's death when they were investigating her death at the age of 4. According to Luke, his younger brother, Sam helped him bury Valerie's body, but according to the police, Sam wasn't home when Valerie died, and it's still unclear if his parents knew about it or had anything to do with it. However, it's rather odd that they didn't hear 2018. The 5-day trial started with opening statements on April 2, 2018, at Somerset Skowhegan's principal court. Luke entered a not guilty plea and claimed that he had been set up. Although he insisted he wouldn't have left incriminating objects like a note and an engagement ring close to Valerie's body, the investigation linked Luke Timen to every item discovered there. After looking over the data on both Luke's and Valerie's phones, a computer forensics specialist also testified. The last time Valerie's phone was used, according to the records, was August 25, 2016, the day authorities think she died. The majority of the detective's time was devoted to outlining the process for monitoring cell phone usage and how it can be used to ascertain an individual's location at the time of a call. According to the documents, Valerie allegedly spent time with his friend Billy Joe while making 31 calls in a single day. Valerie only took the final call, which lasted a little more than 13 minutes. By the end of the call, police think he was at home. Another woman accused him of cheating on her in a message that Valerie received the following morning. After that, she refused to be with Timen again, and his defense questioned these phone logs. Luke's younger brother, Sam Timen, testified against his brother in court. Sam told the jury that he had no relationship with the 28-year-old, despite Luke's claims to the police that he helped him bury Valerie. Saways, 28, had his work log to prove that he was actually working 2 hours away. Sam testified in court that he overheard his brother confess to being an accomplice, and that Luke chose to confront him about it. He asked Luke why, and he responded with claims. Luke said, "What else do you do with a dead body?" in response to what he said. Luke kept asking questions about Luke, pointing the finger at Sam's parents and accusing him of shooting Valerie. Timen said that neither she nor Sam's parents could Luke anything like that. The officer questioned whether PTSD was the reason behind Luke's blackout. He had previously admitted to police that he occasionally had flashbacks due to his PTSD. Afterwards, witnesses that the prosecutor brought to the court discussed Valerie's side of the story and Valerie's team behind closed doors. They testified that the couple used a lot of illegal substances and that Luke informed people that he was divorcing Valerie at the same time that Valerie's ex-girlfriend, Sam's girlfriend, was getting a divorce. Sam Jackie Spencer, the older brother, told jurors that she and the couple had a wonderful relationship. At their wedding, she even served as the maid of honor. Spencer testified that she saw Valerie and Luke using a variety of illegal substances together. Spencer claimed that, around the time Valerie disappeared, Luke began texting her frequently. She had always sensed that he was interested in dating her. "He used to tell me that he always felt a connection to me." According to Spencer, he has always wanted to get together or hang out. Jurors were shown additional evidence from the crime scene in addition to witnesses who knew the couple personally. 3 minutes after Valerie's body was found, a video showed the officer walking through dense forest on an overgrown ATV trail, a common sight behind many rural Maine homes, to Timen's house. At the Timen Lucidance, members of the evidence response team gave testimony regarding their fee Timen. Luke's defense team quickly objected to a few items, such as a .45 caliber handgun taken from one of the home's rooms and gardening tools found in a property. Timan Smith, a team attorney, NC attorney, argued that the state assumed the gun and ammunition that Timan had taken because they were discovered in the house. They noted that they never confirmed who owned them, suggesting that someone else in the house might have had access to them. UC Timan gave his closing remarks on the 5th day of the trial. Despite his own objections, he testified. Timan admitted that he had made many changes to his version. To protect his clients, he provided investigators with multiple stories, he told the jury. According to Luke, He was forced to make a false statement by the detectives. He said he had no motive to take his wife's life and that there was no DNA evidence linking him to the crime. All the evidence pointed to Tiemann, the prosecutor, as the only person who could hurt Valerie. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before finding Tiemann guilty. On May 11, 2018, the jury announced the verdict. Valerie T. Mothers Mothmog Thayed acknowledged her sincere grief and heartache in her statement at the sentencing hearing. Luke is an evil-hearted man who should be sentenced to life in prison because of his persistent denial of the events, which disgusts me greatly. In addition, Luke's mother spoke for her son. She requested that the court take into account Luke Tiemann's entire life. She said, "I don't ask you to ignore evidence, but I ask you to consider the whole person and balance justice with me." When his parents pleaded for the judge's pity, Tiemann sobbed. His mother, La Tiemann, claimed that her son was changed after returning from 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. "I'm asking for understanding," she said, adding that she wasn't trying to use post-traumatic stress disorder as an excuse. Valerie's parents wanted Luke Tiemann to receive a life sentence, but he was given a 55-year sentence. The attorney for Harmon's family was shocked to learn that Tiemann's defense did not use post-traumatic stress disorder to obtain a lighter sentence for him. Tiemann changed his testimony once more, but this did not help him either. Tiemann appealed, but it did not have the desired effect while he was incarcerated. Why, in your opinion, did Luke Tiemann bury Valerie's body with other items? And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case, with you. At this point, a single horrifying discovery validated the police officer's worst fears. A psychotic murderer was at large. The murderer believed he had escaped, but he was unaware that he had been captured on camera. The police discovered a lead that would turn the case around just when it appeared to be unsolvable. But the first chapter of his dark tale exposed a horror so unthinkable that it rocked even the most infamous offenders to their foundation. On April 7, 2016, at 7:36 p.m., a homeless woman in Pasco County, Florida, dialed 911. She had discovered something she would never forget while searching for cans. The suspected area was in the vicinity of Newport Richey's Woodlands. Matthew Adamo, the Pasco County Sheriff, was scheduled to look into the report. Detectives initially thought it was a homeless altercation gone wrong, but they quickly discovered they were dealing with something far more sinister. The caller, who was questioned by detectives, stated that a man's headless body was found next to a shopping center and a community of mobile homes. She immediately fled again, preventing the scene from becoming contaminated. The investigative team split up into 2 groups after verifying that the body was indeed in the wooded area. One was to find evidence, and the other was to secure the body. They hoped to find something gruesome that might have been captured on camera at the Metro PCS store, which was fortunately the closest location. The majority of the CCTV footage had been deleted when the staff member led them to the room where it was being recorded. Everything on the camera had been deleted because the building had just been purchased by new owners on Friday. Meanwhile, another group of police officers cleared the path to the body and secured the area. Finding the victim and making preliminary inferences were their top priorities. The investigators were on the verge of discovering something that would completely change the course of their investigation. They had an idea of who the deceased might have been as soon as they discovered the body belonged to a woman. Just over a mile from the forested area, in October 2015, 21-year-old Brooklyn Peck was reported missing. Her case was declared unsolved by the police following a protracted investigation. The hope of finding Brooklyn safe and sound had faded along with the exhaustion of the search for her. However, after 6 traumatic months, Brooklyn's family once again hoped to find some sort of closure when the recently discovered body was reported on the news. However, the coroner's report, which would be obtained once forensics had safely removed the body and performed tests, was necessary to confirm whether it was Brooklyn. However, all of that had to wait until the crime scene was thoroughly examined, and the body's ambiguous location was making things more difficult. They were eventually able to examine the body up close at approximately 9:05 p.m. The officers had no idea that they were going to come across one of the most devastating discoveries of their lives. Since she was still wearing jewelry, the investigators concluded that it wasn't a robbery gone wrong. Her face had been so severely mutilated that it was unrecognizable, and her clothing was pulled over it. Her torn stockings further raised suspicions among the police that this crime scene was more than a landfill. This was the precise location where the victim had died. They had brought her here and killed her. It was extremely unsettling to consider that another person would do this to someone and abandon them without a sense of identity, purpose, or concern. They were certain that the investigation would not be simple. The victim had endured the most terrible final moments, whether or not it was Brooke Lynn. In actuality, the detectives had never seen a more heinous case of sexual assault. The medical examiner's office eventually informed them that blunt force trauma to the head was the cause of death. The investigators were aware that they had seen the aftermath of a deranged, unsettling fantasy. The real, unsettling tale would begin to take shape here. Their best guess for the Jane Doe's identity was Brooke Lynn Peck. The detectives immersed themselves in Brooke Lynn's case file while the body was prepared for forensic examination. They discovered something grim there. They found a physical characteristic that made it impossible for the body to be Brooke Lynn, even before the forensic report disproved the link between the body and Brooke Lynn. This was just one of the many twists that made this case feel like a movie. The tip of the recovered body's left pointer finger was still present, but Brooke Lynn's was missing. They now understood that Brooke Lynn Peck was not the deceased. They felt a wide range of emotions upon learning that this was not Brooke Lynn. They had been hoping for some closure, so they went from being relieved and happy that it wasn't her to feeling sad that it wasn't her. The effort to positively identify Jane Doe was a complete failure. Searching through the month's missing persons reports until they discovered a good match was the next difficult task. In an effort to identify the woman, and if at all possible, provide closure to yet another family in need of answers, they launched a thorough search through recent missing persons reports. After searching through the documents, they eventually discovered a match, a woman who had been reported missing just a few weeks earlier and who looked remarkably similar to the body they had found. The detectives realized they were starting a completely new investigation after making this identification. Judith Therianos, age 52, was the owner of the body. The family of this grandmother, who had been missing for more than a month, was in the same state of desperation as Brooke Lynn's. They were aware that it would take a careful balancing act between forensic accuracy and unwavering resolve, and maybe a little bit of luck, to find out what had happened to this woman. Their attention now turned to discovering the truth about Judith's terrible fate, even though Brooke Lynn's case was still pending. Newport Richey was not Judith's home. She was only a guest. She had gone there to visit a friend who was fighting cancer with another friend. Unfortunately, she never came home. Born in September 1963, Judith Therianos was originally from Maine. When she was younger, she frequently took family vacations to Greece because she loved to travel. The 52-year-old who had volunteered at a bookstore and worked at a nursing home in the past was said to be a kind and compassionate individual. In February 2016, the mother of three had gone to Florida to take care of a sick friend. By obtaining a fingerprint from the deceased, the medical examiner's office was able to identify the person as Judith Therianos. The CCTV footage collected from the area gave detectives a vital lead when they eventually identified Judith, which gave the case new life. The detectives divided into groups. A couple of detectives went to a convenience store to get video, and a few others went to find her last known location. They focused on a convenience store and a number of nearby companies. She was seen buying alcohol at a nearby convenience store which she was known to frequent in the first surveillance footage they found. In the surveillance footage, they saw Judith and another individual buying her items at the time. She was seen in the video purchasing alcohol at a nearby convenience store with an unnamed man. That left the police with a suspect to pursue, one who might have the answers to this puzzling riddle. They were unsure whether the man was the cause of Judith's death or if he was just another acquaintance when they found the surveillance footage of her in the convenience store with him. He might be able to help them with the investigation. Since he was the last person seen with Judith, identifying him became the top priority. He wasn't registered, regrettably, because the DNA evidence taken from the crime scene didn't match anything in the database. With only a description and a picture of the man, the detectives had no choice but to search the neighborhood. In the hopes that someone would recognize their main suspect, they went back to the trailer park and knocked on as many doors as they could. All of them provided hazy descriptions, suggesting that they were either unaware of what had occurred or that they were unwilling to speak with the police. They came closest to a man named Grizzly, who possessed both evidence and information. He provided them with concrete proof and information that went beyond mere rumors. He told the police that although he didn't know the man well, he had provided him with a place to stay for a few days. Additionally, he told the detectives that the man had forgotten his bag. Because it directly connected the suspect's clothing to the scene, Grizzly's disclosure was a significant turning point in the case. But that was where Grizzly's knowledge abruptly stopped. He said that aside from the fact that the suspect appeared nervous, bordering on paranoid, and eager to get out of town, he didn't know much about him. Grizzly claims that although the man had discussed purchasing a one-way ticket to Chicago, he had not provided any personal information, not even his name. An unexpected lead was about to be given to detectives, and it developed in a way that added to the mystery's unnerving aspects. The police suspected that there might be a lead so significant that it would completely blow the case apart. They promptly gave him the assurance that anything he revealed would be treated with the highest confidentiality and protection, because they were at a pivotal point in their investigation. Stefan was the first to speak. Stefan knew the mystery man as well as Judith. His name, Stefan said, was Timothy. Timothy had mentioned his interest in Judy while they were together at a convenience store. The investigators had never been closer to the truth, thanks to Grizzly's evidence linking the mystery man to the scene, and Stefan's now implied willingness to divulge something significant. Something Stefan was about to reveal would finally solve the mystery once and for all. Even though the mystery man had finally been identified, Stefan had more in store for us. Police had found a bottle of rubbing alcohol at the scene. They were unaware of its significance at the time. They now knew that in an effort to hide his identity by destroying the DNA, he had poured rubbing alcohol on her body. The man was recognized by Stefan as Timothy Janzen. After expressing interest in Judith, Timothy's feelings would take a deadly turn in a matter of hours. The detectives were on the verge of making a discovery that would completely change the course of events. For them, it marked a significant turning point. After investigating Timothy Janzen's background, detectives discovered that he had been arrested 4 times in Florida for domestic abuse, aggravated battery, and twice for not showing up for court. Curiously, 3 weeks prior to the discovery of Judith's body, one of those arrests for aggravated assault occurred. He broke into a woman's house late at night after drinking too much. More significantly, though, this indicated that he was already under police arrest. Timothy Janzen lacked any genuine regret for his crimes and was incredibly heartless. With CCTV footage, witness statements, and evidence that placed him close to the crime scene, the detectives were now prepared to address the most pressing issue. Just the video evidence was important. Witnesses also recalled Timothy's unpredictable behavior and interactions with Judith in the days preceding her death, and had caught him close to the crime scene around the time of Judith's murder. As the pieces came together, the detectives were ready to construct a strong case because they knew that Timothy's violent past gave the current charges context and substance. When the detectives went to the prison to question the cold-blooded killer, the police thought they had finally located him, but they had no idea that this was only the beginning. Detectives discovered as they dug deeper that they were looking into a pattern of increasing violence rather than just one murder. Janzen's history of arrests suggested that he was used to getting away with grave consequences for his behavior. In June 2015, Timothy entered a no-contest plea for misdemeanor battery, adding to his criminal history. In December 2015, he was also accused of resisting a police officer and violating his probation. Timothy was arrested in January 2016 for using a knife to break into the home of his former roommate. The ex-roommate reportedly claimed that he had previously threatened to break up with her. Timothy, however, was set free in February 2016. Since he had been incarcerated since March 23, 2016, for a probation violation, the authorities didn't have to search far for him once Judith was located. He reportedly acknowledged having consensual sex with Judith, but withheld further details. However, other prisoners came forward with information stating that Timothy had described what had happened and confessed to killing Judith. They anticipated a confession, but they were taken by surprise. He didn't confess to his crimes until he was officially booked, charged with first-degree murder, and put inside the prison walls, but not to the investigators. He conversed with another prisoner instead. He smashed her face in and suffocated her to death, then went to a place that would make anyone's skin crawl. Timothy was merely idly sitting there. He was not in a panic. He wasn't going crazy. He appeared to have experienced nothing at all. Timothy used his victim's pilfered credit card to eat some waffles. Those who dared to imagine what he would do next would never be able to forget it. Timothy Janzen received a life sentence. By commemorating Judith Therianos, we pay tribute to her life and promote a society in which each person is treated with respect and dignity, preventing further victims of needless violence. Nothing really surprises the police, who always see the worst in people. The police were affected by this, even though it was sickening and unsettling. Some people experienced nightmares, not so much because of him, as because of how awful her final moments were. Investigators and the general public were left wondering, was he struggling with guilt, or was there a darker side to his selective silence? This confession's timing and nature sparked numerous debates. Timothy was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and given a life sentence in October 2017. For the January 2016 incident, he was also found guilty on 2 counts of aggravated assault and sentenced to 5 years in prison each. According to prison records, Timothy is still a prisoner at the Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The Janzen family appeared to be just another loving, close-knit family, always willing to lend a helping hand to one another. However, everything changed one day. Even their closest friends found it hard to believe that something so shocking had occurred in their home. A string of incidents that rocked the family and left everyone in their wake in complete shock were concealed behind this mystery. Neighbors, friends, and law enforcement all attempted to piece together what exactly happened behind closed doors and what might have led to the dissolution of this seemingly ideal family. Randy Janzen led an apparently ordinary life in the small, sleepy towns with brick storefronts and quaint coffee shops amidst the thick forests of British Columbia. Randy had grown up in Langley, a small town that many people view as a tranquil haven. However, years of arduous work and aspirations that didn't always result in happiness lay behind this calm exterior. Randy had a strong relationship with his father, who was employed at a nearby lumber mill from a young age. Randy learned all he knew about woodworking from his father, and he followed in his footsteps by working at the same mill after high school. Long shifts and a great deal of physical exertion were necessary for the demanding work, but Randy was used to such difficulties. Randy was just one of many people in Langley who believed that the lumber mill was an essential part of the community's economy and way of life. He committed himself to the arduous task of transporting logs and processing wood for more than 10 years. Even though the work was repetitive and draining, it made him feel secure and proud. Even though every day was the same, Randy found meaning in the routine of his work and his role in the neighborhood. If the lumber mill stood for security, then music was Randy's release, a means of expressing feelings that he wasn't always able to articulate. Since his early years, music had been a part of his life. And as time went on, singing and playing the guitar changed from being a pastime to becoming an essential outlet. He often played at a local bar in Langley, where people would congregate to watch live performances and relax after their own exhausting workdays. Randy transformed his typically quiet and reserved manner into a dynamic and captivating presence that enthralled his audience. His genuine and passionate performances were adored by the locals, and they provided Randy with a sense of fulfillment and connection that was often lacking in his daily life. On what appeared to be a typical evening, Randy met Laurel, the woman who would forever alter his life, at that neighborhood bar. Laurel, who worked as a bartender and was 6 years older than Randy, frequently watched his shows from behind the counter. Charming and self-assured, Laurel was adored by customers for her ability to foster a welcoming environment and her honest, approachable manner. What began as informal discussions, initially about music and later about life, swiftly developed into a more profound bond. They became closer because of their love of music and similar aspirations. Even though her life took a different turn, Laurel always wanted to pursue a career in music and played the piano. Together with a sincere interest in one another, this shared dream quickly developed into something far deeper. Randy's life at the lumber mill went on as usual, but Laurel's presence now added color to it. As they started making plans for the future together, their bond grew stronger. Despite his comfort, Langley started to feel too small for their shared dreams. In their ideal world, music would serve as the cornerstone of their future rather than merely a pastime. Randy gained a renewed sense of purpose, love, and hope for the future from his work at the mill, his performances at the bar, and his evenings with Laurel. Randy and Laurel frequently talked about their 1990 wedding day. Only their closest friends and family were present at the modest ceremony, which had a warm, personal feel. Live music, exemplified by a song Randy sang for his bride, signaled the start of a life full of dreams and love. Their world revolved around their daughter Emily, who was born a few years after their wedding. Anyone who knew the family could see how much Randy loved Emily, and he frequently boasted that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Emily's life took a sudden and challenging turn when she was only 8 years old. Her sudden, severe headaches became so incapacitating that she was unable to pursue her musical endeavors any further. Emily had demonstrated exceptional singing ability at an early age, winning prizes in competitions and enthralling her parents with her voice. She had been attending vocal lessons and pursuing her dream of becoming a singer, leading a busy life. Motivated by her achievements, her parents made every effort to encourage her aspiration. Randy and Laurel initially struggled to comprehend what was happening to their daughter. They were unaware of her condition despite multiple medical tests and doctor visits that yielded no conclusive results. Because the bright lights and cacophonous classroom atmosphere caused more severe headaches, Emily was forced to drop out of school and transition to home-based learning. She spent most of her time in her room, which turned into a dimly lit haven. As she suffered, Randy and Laurel took turns taking care of her, doing everything they could to make her feel better. Doctors finally diagnosed migraines after conducting a number of tests. The whole family suffered a terrible blow. Emily's prescribed medications provided only a limited amount of relief, lowering her pain levels but never completely halting the attacks. Her greatest source of happiness, the music she once loved so much, was now out of her grasp. Once a vibrant and active young child, Emily grew more reclusive and spent most of her time in darkness and silence. In a desperate attempt to support their daughter, Randy and Laurel looked everywhere. They looked into alternative therapies, spoke with a lot of specialists, and tried a lot of treatments, but none of them provided the long-term respite they so desperately sought. The medical forecast was bleak. Many people with migraines must live with the pain for the rest of their lives. According to statistics, 34% of people with migraines had trouble finding work, 30% had trouble finishing their education, and roughly 53% were unable to drive because of their symptoms. Even though these figures made Emily's illness medically common, they didn't lessen the pain her parents were feeling as they saw their daughter's vitality wane. For Randy, these were especially difficult years. Once his haven, music, turned into a painful reminder that Emily was no longer able to experience the passion that had made her life so happy. Without Emily's voice to accompany him, his guitar-playing evenings had become meaningless, and he no longer found joy in playing at the neighborhood bar where he had once flourished. He began to spend more time at home, staying near Emily, and doing his best to help. But Randy and Laurel felt more and more powerless as Emily's pain increased. Their once vibrant and determined daughter now spent her days cooped up in her room, shut off from the outside world and light. Randy kept working, but his mind was constantly on Emily, and he woke up every day hoping to find a way to make her pain go away. Emily's health had gotten worse by the time she turned 18. Her migraine attacks increased in frequency and intensity, occasionally lasting several days. She was unable to learn and keep up friendships because of the constant pain. Emily persisted in pursuing her goals in spite of these obstacles. In order to pursue a career in the fine arts and eventually become an opera singer, she enrolled in the arts program at the University of British Columbia. Emily saw going to university as an opportunity to restore her sense of normalcy and get closer to the life she had always dreamed of, not just an academic pursuit. Emily forced herself to remain engaged in spite of her physical tiredness and ongoing pain flare-ups. She studied literature, art history, and music theory in addition to taking voice lessons. She even took part in concerts and student events whenever she could. Her classmates appreciated her perseverance in staying active in university life, despite the obstacles she encountered. Her actions, however, concealed a difficult battle going on behind the scenes. Emily frequently had to skip class and make up lost time on her own. Emily felt weak, sleepy, and exhausted from the strong drugs she was taking to treat her migraines. To reduce her symptoms, she was prescribed triptans, anticonvulsants, and antidepressants, but these medications had serious side effects, including depression, difficulty focusing, and a general deterioration in her physical health. Emily eventually started avoiding medicine as much as she could in order to lessen its effects on her body. Instead, she looked into alternative ways to treat her illness. Emily avoided triggers like bright lights, strong smells, and loud noises, used cold compresses on her head, and resorted to breathing techniques and meditation. Her room turned into a haven where she could go to escape anything that made her suffering worse. Her parents, Randy and Laurel, alternated in taking care of her and doing everything they could to alleviate her agony, but during the worst episodes, she spent whole days in the dark, protected from light and sound. Nevertheless, Emily did her best to keep things normal. Despite not being able to see her friends as frequently as she used to, she maintained contact with them. Her friends never deserted her, even though she occasionally had to postpone plans due to unexpected migraine attacks. To ensure she didn't feel alone, they would pay her a visit at home, spending time with her and providing support. Emily was unable to give up the things she loved, even though her condition limited her options. No matter how challenging the path became, she remained steadfast in her resolve to pursue her music and live life to the fullest. Randy Janzen shocked everyone who knew him with a Facebook post on May 7, 2015. He admitted to doing unimaginable things over the past 10 days in this post. He started off by writing about his daughter Emily, calling her the most ideal daughter anyone could ask for. She was gifted, smart, and compassionate. Emily made their lives so much more joyful by bringing laughter into their home and always lending a helping hand to others, even when she was having difficulties herself. However, she had to let go of the dreams she had fought so hard to realize because her illness had taken so much from her. Migraines had plagued Emily since elementary school. Deep depression resulted from the ongoing pain, and days when it didn't stop for even a second became her reality. Randy explained that while his daughter spent her days in hospitals or in her quiet, dark room, she would observe her classmates going about their daily lives. Emily tried to hope for a better future in spite of everything, but nothing seemed to work. Randy was employed at a lumber mill, but he spent all of his free time with his daughter. He told his friends that he couldn't imagine his life without Emily and that she was everything to him. He was driven to the brink of despair by seeing her suffer and being powerless to stop it. Randy was obviously having a lot of emotional difficulties, as friends remembered when he confided in them about his suffering. Randy made a choice one day that would change everything. He acknowledged taking a gun and killing Emily in a Facebook post, saying he did so to relieve her of the constant agony. He described how he saw her as an angel, free from her agony, floating above the clouds with her long hair blowing in the wind. He continued after that. Randy disclosed that he had also killed his wife, Laurel, because he couldn't imagine her having to deal with the loss of their daughter. He killed his sister Shelley a few days later, claiming he didn't want her to live with the guilt of what he had done. Randy clarified in the post that Emily had made every effort to get better. He talked about how resilient and strong she was, but in the end, the illness had broken her. He talked about how helpless he felt knowing he could do nothing to stop her daily suffering. In the end, Randy felt that this was the only way to help Emily, and he had repeatedly told friends that he would do anything for her. Randy's friends and acquaintances called the police right away after he published the post. They wanted to make sure Randy's family was safe because they were appalled by what they read. Many people were shocked by the post and found it difficult to comprehend the scope of what had transpired. After receiving several calls, including one from Randy's close friend Brian Jones, law enforcement moved swiftly to the scene. To conduct an investigation, officers were sent to Randy's residence. One of Randy's best friends, Brian Jones, read the Facebook post and was overcome with confusion and fear. When he saw the signature at the end, a nickname Randy had used since they were in school. He realized his friend had written those words. At first, he thought it was an error or some cruel joke. Brian realized right away how serious the situation was and that he needed to take quick action. He tried calling Randy on the phone as he made his way to Shelley's house after leaving work early. His worry only grew with each call that went unanswered. There was a pile of undeliverable newspapers on the porch when Brian got to Shelley's house. He thought this was odd because Shelley was dependable and never skipped a duty. The windows were covered with drawn curtains, and her old van was parked in the driveway. There were no signs of activity, and the yard was eerily quiet. Brian repeatedly knocked on the door, but no one answered. The scene was eerily silent and eerie in every way. Following the death of their parents, Shelley had led a solitary life. She didn't have kids, lived alone, and didn't often talk to her neighbors. She was renowned for being reliable and consistent in her work, and her primary duty was delivering newspapers. Brian became alarmed at the sight of the unopened newspapers right away. He made the decision to call the police because he knew something was amiss. He was told that he wasn't the first person to voice concerns about the family when he got to the dispatcher. They had already sent out a patrol unit to see how things were going. Randy wrote at the conclusion of his Facebook post that his family was now pain-free and in a better place. He apologized to everyone he had harmed, accepted full responsibility, and conveyed regret for his actions. Brian experienced a wave of shock and disbelief as he read the post's eerie closing. "Rest in peace, my little family." He had always known Randy to be a good-hearted, loving man who cherished his family. He found it incomprehensible that his friend could have committed such a crime or even had a gun. He remembered Randy's love and devotion when he talked about his family, and he found it hard to comprehend how things could have gone so wrong. Randy Janzen was inside his house when the police arrived, and they tried to get in touch with him. Through a second-story window, officers saw him brandishing a gun. They tried calling Randy on the phone and using loudspeakers, but he did not answer. The officers knew they needed to proceed cautiously to prevent further escalation because they were acutely aware of how tense the situation was. Negotiators surrounded the house and got to work, but Randy didn't show any signs of giving up or wanting to talk. The standoff turned into something much more dangerous after a few hours. Officers saw smoke rising from the upper floor after Randy set the house on fire. There were unsuccessful attempts to enter the house. Access through the windows was cut off as the flames spread too quickly. On the first floor, officers saw a body covered in a sheet, but they couldn't get to it to identify it. The officers were forced to flee as the entire house was engulfed in flames in a matter of minutes. When firefighters got there, the house was completely destroyed by the fire and could not be saved. Even after it was put out, the fire was so severe that it was dangerous to enter the interior for a few days. 3 days after the fire, on May 10, investigators were finally allowed to enter the burned-out remnants of the house to start their investigation. Investigators discovered 3 bodies inside the burned-out house. Emily, 19, was found with her body wrapped in a sheet in her bedroom. Laurel, 50, was discovered in the kitchen, similarly wrapped in a blanket. It was discovered by investigators that both had been shot in the head twice, about 10 days prior to Randy writing his Facebook post. The body of Randy was discovered in a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Before he set the house on fire, he had killed himself with a gun. It was evident from Randy's body's location and the weapon's remnants that he had been in severe emotional pain when he decided to take his own life. Police discovered Shelley's body in the living room when they got to Randy's sister's house. Shelley, whose body was similarly wrapped in a blanket, had also been shot twice in the head. Since there were no indications of a struggle at the scene, investigators deduced that she had passed away 2 days prior to her discovery, indicating that Randy had taken her by surprise. The past year had seen a serious decline in Emily's health. In order to relieve her unbearable pain, doctors had turned to giving her morphine injections. Neighbors frequently witnessed her parents escorting her home following hospital stays, and these injections were a last resort. Emily needed assistance just to walk because she had gotten so weak. Everyone who knew the family found these times to be devastating. Despite all of the difficulties they encountered, Emily's father, Randy Janzen, always did his best to take care of his family. He sought treatment from the family physician a year prior to the tragic events because he was experiencing severe stress and chronic insomnia. He told the physician that he found it hard to watch his daughter suffer. Randy rejected the medication because he thought it wouldn't solve the underlying issue, even though the doctor advised him to try to get more sleep and suggested sedatives. According to Randy's close friend Brian Jones, Randy had never mentioned having suicidal thoughts or wanting to harm other people. He said Randy was a steady, industrious man who was always willing to help. Randy put his family first, and no one could have predicted that he was capable of such a thing. But Brian pointed out that Randy was at his breaking point. He finally made a terrible choice because he could no longer stand to see his daughter suffer. It was impossible for many neighbors who had known Randy since they were young to reconcile the events with the man they remembered. They said that he had never displayed any signs of cruelty or aggression and was a kind and gentle person. They believed that his acts were motivated by desperation and an inability to handle the suffering and distress that surrounded his family. Randy once told a neighbor that he wouldn't have a reason to live if his daughter ever died. In spite of those statements, Randy spent 10 days living in the house with his wife and daughter's bodies before ending his own life. 4 days before the tragedy, Emily sent out her final tweet, which said, "I complain about the pain, but at least I'm here to feel it. I thank God for the chance to live." It was a reflection of her will to live despite the tremendous suffering she had to endure. She frequently fought to maintain her optimism in her social media posts. She made an effort to remain optimistic despite her illness, even when things appeared dire. Emily was regarded as a good-hearted and sympathetic young lady who made an effort to remain aware of her surroundings. She loved to sing, and when her health permitted it, she did so in the local church. Her performances were remembered with fondness by many Langley residents. Her church attendance decreased as her illness worsened, but she continued to be giving and considerate. On her best days, she would even assist neighborhood children with their homework. She would also bake with her mother and share sweets with neighbors. Emily's mother, Laurel, supported her daughter to the best of her ability. She expressed the anguish and despair she experienced while witnessing her daughter's suffering on Twitter when she wrote, "Emily is back in the hospital, praying to God they can help her. I feel so helpless." Despite being close to emotional exhaustion, Laurel persisted in trying to find ways to improve Emily's condition. Randy's sister Shelley was also unable to predict the tragedy that would occur. None of the family members thought their fates would be determined in such a terrible manner. Randy frequently confided in friends over the past year about the immense stress and strain that Emily's illness had placed on him. Nobody could have foreseen that Randy would eventually become so emotionally unstable that he would choose to murder his family members. As previously stated, Emily kept a Twitter account where she expressed her opinions. She wasn't giving up, as evidenced by her posts. She wrote just prior to the tragedy, "For the first time in 2 years, I've gone 12 hours without pain. I'm so tired of hurting, but I need to keep going." Her words demonstrated her will to fight in spite of the overwhelming obstacles. But Randy was unable to bear the emotional burden any longer. As their daughter's health deteriorated, Laurel was also profoundly impacted. Her distress was reflected in her tweets. The family made an effort to help one another in spite of their desperation, but things kept getting worse, and none of them could predict where it would go. The details have now been revealed, and it is evident how hopelessness, hidden struggles, and despair led to an unexpected tragedy. The Janzen family story serves as a sobering reminder that, even behind seemingly impenetrable walls, unspeakable suffering can fester beneath the surface and occasionally explode in unexpected ways. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Any life may be wrapped in a lovely wrapping, even the most embarrassing ones. You will undoubtedly feel pity and sadness for the unfavorable character if you tell it calmly and portray him as a victim of his circumstances. The truth is that a lot of bad individuals are charming, strong, and crafty, and we honestly think that they weren't always nasty, since they frequently created these situations, and we unconsciously justify their egregious actions. However, We won't defend unlawful behavior today, and we won't cover for anyone. You will choose for yourself whether their actions are justified after reading about this case. A neighborhood person made a spooky call to emergency services on April 4, 2015. He had gone into a friend's living room to turn on the lights and check on him, but when he got to the second floor of the room, he discovered blood all over the place. A scared male voice shouted into the dispatcher's phone. According to the victim's acquaintance, the injured man was not breathing and everything was soaked in blood. Charles Taylor, 59, was brutally murdered in Montgomery County's unincorporated village of Owlette after police arrived, shocking the population. The crime scene resembled the set of a horror film and appeared to be the source of nightmares. The couch where the slain guy was found was fully covered in blood, and there was blood all over the carpet and paintings. It appeared to be a grudge drama due to the savagery of the act. After all, the assailant undoubtedly intended for Charles to suffer from excruciating anguish in addition to his death, repeatedly stabbing him with a sharp knife. The fact that Charles's bloody body was found upstairs in his room and that the house search revealed no obvious evidence of forced entry indicated that the criminal was familiar with the residence and had taken decisive action. Charles Taylor died as a result of 31 stab wounds and blunt force trauma to the back of his skull, according to the results of the forensic medical investigation. Charles Taylor was regarded as a generous and compassionate man. He had a wonderful relationship with his adult son. He loved Amanda, his daughter-in-law, and his 2 grandkids. People see this aspect of life and make judgments regarding the health of the family. How rich, how evil. They describe the family as a healthy family. But did the Taylor family actually live like this? Let's investigate this unpleasant family situation. Because there were few leads available to the authorities, the initial inquiry proceeded somewhat slowly. They began searching for Charles's associates, but they were unable to locate anyone with the intention or motivation to hurt him. They quickly discovered the attackers identify after the theory that it was a member of Charles Taylor's family emerged. That's actually when investigators were fortunate enough to be contacted by a crime blogger who had pictures of Amanda Taylor taking selfies next to Charles's dead body. The wanted list now includes her. On March 27, 1991, Amanda Barbara Nicole Taylor was born in Christiansburg, Virginia. Not much is known about Amanda's early years. The only reason it was challenging is that both of her parents served time in prison. After meeting Mariah Robach, Amanda created a lot of troubles for herself, which led to the start of her youth. Amanda started living an illegal life together. According to Montgomery County Sheriff's records, on October 23, 2005, when the sisters were only 12 years old, they got into a lot of trouble. Amanda and Mariah were charged with unlawful use of a motor vehicle after they fled their home and got into a car. Amanda was accused of unruly conduct at her middle school in early April 2006. She screamed that she would kill everyone there since she detested the place and everyone in it. This is just a small part of Amanda's police station record, and this incident undoubtedly went beyond the bounds of typical teen drama. Amanda started dating Rex Taylor, who was 2 years her senior in 9th grade. On March 27th, Amanda and Rex were born on the same day. Both of them interpreted it as a divine sign. When Amanda learned she was expecting a child, she quit school altogether. She married Rex and they had a son shortly after. However, her criminal impulses persisted after becoming a mother. Additional run-ins with the law also punctuated the years of her married life. Amanda Taylor's police station reports increased rapidly. So had a criminal record for possession of a controlled substance, a conviction for alcohol possession, multiple domestic disputes, and another attempt to flee after stealing a car. Rex Taylor, her spouse, was not from a perfect home either, and Rex battled addictions and the depression they brought around despite their love for one another. The young man developed an addiction to illegal narcotics at the age of 15. The couple eventually had a baby, and at first it appeared that Amanda was still in control and had become a perfect wife and mother. However, she was a little different from other American women in their 20s who have tattoos, piercings, and undoubtedly post daily selfies on social media, as well as the family. Amanda and Rex's relationship was everything but typical. The pair addressed letters to well-known serial killers while they were inside and studied their biographies obsessively. Amanda started to fantasize of turning into a criminal herself, But tragedy befell the family before Amanda could fulfill her dreadful ambition. Amanda's fears about her husband's infidelity overshadowed the couple's complex relationship. The pair finally parted ways in April 2014 when their paths diverged. After moving back in with the family, Rex started using illegal drugs once more. He had hanged himself on his son's 7th birthday, and his lifeless body was found in a shed on the property 4 months after the transfer. Amanda briefly stayed with her mother and friend Mariah Roback after losing her cherished husband. She made friends with Sean Ball, another Roback family member, while she was staying with her friend Mariah. On their joint birthday, March 27, 2015, Amanda visited Rex's grave and made an attempt to commit herself. Since her behavior and mental processes were obviously abnormal and could endanger herself and others, she was rescued and taken by force to a mental health facility. Amanda was promptly sent home, however, in spite of her mother's demands and entreaties for extended care. Due to her unstable personality issues, things appeared to get worse when she was discharged from the mental health facility. Thus, Amanda was asked to leave by Mariah and her husband. Mr. Ball, who had fallen deeply in love with Amanda, was also expelled. Amanda's late husband, Rex Taylor, served as the basis for her intense urge to kill during this time. When it appeared like her only true friends had abandoned her, she wanted to honor Rex and make him proud of her, and in order to do that, someone had to be expertly killed while he was still alive. Additionally, Rex had a fascination with serial killers that had long transcended his hobby status. During his lifetime, he was proud of the close friendship he had with criminals. Imagine discovering an envelope addressed to you from a well-known serial criminal who was arrested in 1980 when you go to the mailbox one morning after leaving your home. You are relieved to discover a birthday card for your little child and a handwritten note inside the envelope rather than any eerie keepsakes. Some would contend that getting such a message would be just as terrible as getting a strand of hair or a severed finger. In any case, it would be unusual for most people to get anything in the mail from a serial offender, but Amanda and Rex Taylor's family did not. Some terrible disclosures of earlier social media posts under Amanda's account have proven Amanda's fixation with crime, as well as Rex's behavior in his desire to communicate and receive experiences from renowned serial criminals. Amanda praises a number of criminals in a number of blogs for their heinous acts, such as Timothy McVeigh, the mastermind of the biggest terrorist assault in American history, and Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, 2 young men who planned a mass shooting at Columbine High School. She naturally chose to begin her career as a criminal with a vengeance, since she wanted to be one of those vicious criminals she so greatly admired. After a while, Amanda blamed her husband's death on Rex's father, Charlie Taylor, saying that he had not assisted Rex in kicking his pill addiction but had instead acclimated his son to illegal substances. The cold-bloodedness and cynicism with which Amanda exacted revenge on her father-in-law, Charlie Taylor, will chill you to your core. She required a helper who would support her acts without reservation. She needed a willing accomplice to support her if she felt threatened, and Amanda already had one. Of course, it was Sean Ball, the man she was in love with. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to do it alone the first time. It was only a matter of time until she would take over him. Amanda quickly found the eager accomplice she sought in Sean, but since he didn't know what he was getting himself into, Sean and Amanda came up with their evil plan with military accuracy and carried it out. At precisely 3:27 p.m., the time that Rex and Amanda were born, Amanda and Sean visited Charles Taylor's run-down house in the neighboring town of Ironton, Virginia, on a spring April afternoon in 2015. In order to fill an Easter basket for her cherished grandchildren, Charles had to pay her money. After a half hour of pleasant conversation, Amanda suddenly sat down on the couch beside Charles, as if a switch had been flipped in her brain. Amanda's actions took a significant turn. After she started viciously stabbing Charles with a knife, Sean struck him in the head with a tire iron. Then, after shocking Charles, Amanda drove the knife hard into his chest once more. She seemed so angry that she was unable to see anything around her, and Charles simply stared at her and said, "What are you doing?" He reached out and grabbed her hair as she stabbed him, but Amanda kept stabbing him, and he kept screaming. Amanda Taylor used a sharp bayonet knife to stab her father-in-law, Charles Taylor, 31 times. She wanted to feel his final breath and wanted him to know that she was the one killing him every time she looked into his eyes. She desired Charles's death as a form of retaliation. The whole room was covered in blood, and she halted as her anger started to fade. Amanda didn't stop there either. By snapping a photo of herself close to the body and sharing it on social media, she went one step further in her extreme behavior. A frightening phone call with Amanda's voice on the other end of the line came to Amanda's mother later that day from an unidentified number. She broke down in tears as she told her mother how much she loved her and how valuable all she had done for her was. She also revealed through sobs that she had done what she had to do, and it was a terrible thing. Her mother could feel it, and she knew that something horrible had occurred. Amanda resisted her plea for her daughter to return to Christiansburg, saying that she and Sean were en route to Pittsburgh. It was well known that Amanda was in a downhill spiral, and it all began nearly 8 months ago when her husband Rex Taylor, who had battled depression and illegal substance misuse for years, committed suicide by hanging. When authorities looked at Amanda's social media profile, they were taken aback. It was obvious that she took great pride in the crime she had done. The police issued a warrant for her arrest in the hopes of a speedy settlement, but Amanda and Sean had already made their getaway by then. As though they were planning a fantastic vacation rather than being on the run, Amanda and Sean chose a really picturesque escape route. They traveled from Virginia to North Carolina along the Blue Ridge Parkway. According to the photographs taken at the crime site, which depict the heinousness of the crime, the authorities were quite concerned that the killers would carry on killing, and they were correct, because Amanda didn't stop there. Amanda's sins would not, however, go unpunished. She did not mean to conceal her act, nor did she intend to punish herself after doing her intended crime. She started posting on social media shortly after she and Sean Ball left on the road, accepting responsibility for the murder and claiming that she did it for her husband. However, Amanda and Sean were more than just fugitives. After committing her first crime, which Amanda believed was ideal, they were now following their next victim. She was unable to stop. She had to continue killing. They took out cash at a gas station, filled up the car, and drove on to Tennessee. After tasting blood, Amanda was determined to carry out her wish to commit another crime, and she would come very close to doing so despite Sean's best efforts to persuade her to stop and simply go on the run, hide, and lay low. After stopping at a Fleabag motel in Tennessee, they restocked on ammunition at a sporting goods store. The following day, they departed to grant Amanda's bleeding desire after spending the night in a motel by the side of the road. At a rest area on Blue Ridge Boulevard, Amanda spots 2 young girls who might become her next victims. "I'm going to bring these girls in so we can shoot them," she said to Sean. He agreed that they needed money. Amanda walked outside to guide them to the car, but Sean wouldn't shoot them when she brought them inside. Amanda was enraged. She returned to the vehicle and drove off. She was unable to control herself, so she halted the vehicle in the driveway and attacked her accomplice. She was now aiming for Sean. After taking a handgun from the glove box, Amanda exited the vehicle and went to the passenger side, where Sean was sitting with his eyes closed in fear. She had gone so far. She was so enraged that she pointed the gun at the random jogger in front of her and squeezed the trigger. Fortunately, Amanda missed, and Sean opened his eyes and regained consciousness when he heard the gunfire. He noticed that the revolver's muzzle was aimed at him. Amanda claimed that she wanted him to understand that she was simply using him for the car and the pistol before killing him. Then she fired, striking Sean square in the face. Amanda left Sean bleeding on the side of the road from the gunshot wound after taking a photo of his wounded face to share on social media. She was now running by herself. They possessed firearms. They had already purchased magazines and ammunition for the identical weapon and had taken them from a relative's home. The police captain was aware that they appeared to agree on the course of events, which would begin with Charles Taylor's murder. Amanda kept posting notes while the police pursued her. She disclosed that she killed Sean in a field during a traffic check in her subsequent social media post. Amanda shared a photo of a silver revolver in her lap along with a comment on Instagram. It resembled a suicide note more than anything else. "All right, that moment is coming up. I will finally find peace when I find my hubby in hell. I know you will give my lovely kids the life I could never offer them, and I love you, Mom. I'll be free at last." In an effort to find Amanda, the police were keeping a close eye on her account and recording surveillance footage from patrol stations along the white SUV's path. It also aided authorities in pursuing the criminals as they fled in it. Amanda was located by cell tower signals, and officers from the North Carolina State Highway Patrol saw the white SUV traveling east on I-40, close to Asheville. No matter how much she ran, she attempted to stop. She refused to give up easily. The police were ready. They were aware that she was dangerous and armed. Later that day, another grim social media post that read, "Okay, the time is about to come when I find my husband in hell and finally become one with him," further solidified this truth. Amanda appears arrogant in her photo, as like she is pleased with her accomplishments. Eventually, all the commotion and devastation stopped after a 2-mile stretch of spikes that had been placed deliberately in Amanda's route. Amanda was arrested. Amanda was handcuffed by police after they dragged her from the automobile at around 8 in the morning. Paramedics discovered Sean dead by the side of the road. Amanda feigned indifference to the proceedings in the interrogation room. Before Captain Robert realized it, she was messing with her hair and drinking a soft drink when another detective entered. Amanda gave up her right to silence and admitted to everything when questioned. She appeared to feel completely at home. Amanda found out that Sean wasn't dead after speaking with the investigators. There were no markings on him other than the fact that the bullet had passed right through his jaw and made him faint from the pain. Amanda then made the heartbreaking admission that she wished to be put to death. "Is there anything you can do? The death punishment alone is what I would want." In the interrogation audio, Amanda claims, "I kill people. I'm worthy of dying. I'd be better off just leaving. If I could just get the death penalty and go, it would be best for my kids." In a startling turn of events, Amanda later found herself apologizing and entering a not guilty plea in front of the court. However, during the trial, Amanda detailed her crime and maintained that she had done the right thing by killing old Charles, who had stolen Rex from her. She claimed that after being furious with Rex for harming her, she became even more enraged with his father. Amanda said that she wished for Charles to experience the same suffering that she experienced. She claimed that she killed Charles because she believed he was responsible for the death of her husband Rex, to whom Charles had allegedly given illegal substances. Amanda claimed that the instant Charles mentioned Rex once more, she turned to him and began stabbing him, which made her feel more alive than she had since Rex had passed away. She acknowledged that the times when the knife penetrated her father-in-law made her very happy. At last, Amanda let out all of her pent-up resentment and rage. Captain Robert New stated, "She did it to get attention, and by not pleading guilty, she got the opportunity to talk about the case." Amanda gave an awful explanation. She does, after all, liken the sensation of the crime to a pleasant recollection. The jury heard testimony during the November 2015 trial about Amanda's 31 stabbings of Charles and her intended targets, chest and face. The jury found Amanda Taylor guilty of first-degree murder in under 30 minutes. She received a life sentence. She was described as the height of depravity by the judge. Sean Ball accepted a suspended 60-year sentence as part of the plea agreement. After serving 41 years in jail, Sean acknowledged that he is not deserving of pity and that he is deeply sorry for his actions, but he still has to live with the shame of his actions every day and wonders why this happened in his life. As part of a plea deal, Sean Ball admitted to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 41 years in prison. The 60-year term was suspended, but Ball was required to serve 41 years and 1 month. Amanda recently lost her appeal of her conviction. She stated that if necessary, she intends to appeal her conviction to the Supreme Court. Amanda became famous as a killer selfie taker, but she obviously did not turn into a serial criminal. In a phone interview from prison for a popular show, Amanda Taylor made a devastating admission. She responded, "I was just really excited and thought I wanted to take a picture so I could post it and show everyone. It made me really happy," when asked why she shot body selfies. Lastly, she stated that she did precisely what she wanted to do and that she has no regrets whatsoever for what she did to Charles Taylor. In an incredible phone interview with a local reporter at this period, she likened the experience of getting stabbed to going on a roller coaster. She compared the nerves and the sense of freedom to my first roller coaster ride, and that's exactly how I felt. I had no intention of doing it. You don't see it in the movies. It is truly an animal phenomenon. Amanda Taylor wants more after committing a horrible crime. From an early age, Amanda Taylor was regarded by many who knew her as a very evil and gloomy woman who was obsessed with crime, murder, and serial killers. Pictures of strange death scenes were all over her social media accounts. Amanda Taylor is one of the few women who has ever gone insane, and it frequently wasn't meant to be. Her loved ones made every effort to keep her from going insane, but those who she turned to for support chose to ignore her. Amanda is now being held accountable for all of the devastation that inspired her. Amanda Taylor's desire of becoming a well-known serial killer came to an end in this way. Admit it, when we look at horrible heroes and learn about their past, we unintentionally attempt it on ourselves. We all go through different stages in life, each with its own traumas and experiences. Have you ever had the urge to murder your neighbor because he parks in your space or plays loud music at night? However, they advise rethinking the narrative and simply shouting in the woods or by the lake. It restores moral equilibrium and soothes. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon. You. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Rosemary Silva, 32, and her fiancé, Udirli Damasceno, 30, were getting ready for their wedding ceremony on Sunday, December 4, 2016, which was scheduled to take place in a charming rural setting close to Sao Paulo. To impress the guests and her future husband, Rosemary had orchestrated a spectacular helicopter arrival. But a sudden tragedy made everything into a nightmare just before the ceremony was scheduled to start. Rosemary, a 32-year-old nurse assistant, grew up in a big family in Sao Paulo. Her parents taught her the importance of kindness and compassion at a young age, which led her to pursue a career in helping people. Her co-workers always felt they had her undivided attention and frequently complimented her on her diligence, patience, and kind disposition. When she wasn't working, Rosemary was a happy, energetic person who loved hanging out with friends, volunteering at her church, and making sure her loved ones were safe and content. Since she was a young girl, Rosemary had dreamed of her wedding day. She imagined herself wearing a gorgeous white gown, walking down a flower-adorned aisle, and being surrounded by the smiles of loved ones. She had been inspired by these fantasies to diligently save money for the ideal celebration. Her spectacular helicopter arrival was one of the unique touches she had in mind, a surprise that would enthrall everyone present. Udirli, who was 30 at the time, was a mechanic from Sao Paulo who was raised in a hard-working household that valued simplicity and honesty. He had a strong interest in mechanics from an early age and progressively developed into a proficient professional. Udirli had a reputation for always carrying out his duties with honesty and for being steady, collected, and trustworthy. Despite his previous marriage ending in divorce, he remained close to his daughter from that marriage and spent as much time as he could with her. Although they didn't click right away, the two quickly became closer after meeting at an evangelical church. At first, they approached their discussions warily, as if they were two strangers who were not sure what they had in common. But as their relationship deepened, it became clear that they were destined to be together. In 2015, the pair started dating, and a year later, Udirli proposed, which Rosemary happily accepted. Rosemary and Udirli immediately started organizing their wedding after announcing their engagement. From the selection of flowers and music to the seating configurations and venue decor, Rosemary was adamant that everything be flawless. This was supposed to be a fairy tale day, and Rosemary imagined every visitor looking back on it with delight. But one element of the wedding was particularly noteworthy. Rosemary orchestrated a memorable surprise by arriving in a helicopter. Her dream had been to descend from the sky like a vision, to make an entrance that would be remembered. She worked with pilot Peterson Pinheiro to arrange for a Robinson R-44, a light commercial helicopter, while keeping this information confidential. Just 6 people were aware of the plan, including her brother Silvano Silva and photographer Nayla Cristina Neves, who was supposed to document the event. Rosemary couldn't sleep on the morning of her wedding because she was so excited. As the stylists meticulously worked on her hair and makeup, she was greeted with smiles and congrats at the beauty salon. She continued to visualize her spectacular arrival, descending from above and witnessing the wonder on her guests' faces. She had been thinking about this vision for months. She was aware that the day's high point would be this surprise. Rosemary arrived at a nearby town by 2 p.m. wearing her white wedding gown to catch the helicopter's departure. She was accompanied by her 40-year-old brother Silvano, who had always been her rock. He couldn't refuse his sister's wish, even though he, like many members of their family, was nervous about the flight. They were joined by photographer Nayla, who was expecting a child and was prepared to capture every happy moment. The helicopter took off at 3:30 p.m. The flight went smoothly at first. In anticipation of seeing her fiancé and their guests, Rosemary sat next to her brother, smiling and holding his hand. Nayla made sure that every look and smile would be preserved in their wedding album by filming it all. However, things soon changed. The weather started to get worse. The air inside the helicopter became tense as clouds began to gather, then fog and rain. The pilot had to use instruments to guide him through the thick fog as visibility was fading. Already nervous about flying, Silvano displayed obvious signs of anxiety as he tightly grasped Rosemary's hand while she attempted to reassure him. The photographer Nayla continued to record, but her camera trembled every now and then, revealing the tension that had gripped everyone on board. The pilot approached the venue and tried to find a safe landing spot by descending, but the maneuver became dangerous due to the poor visibility. An uncontrollable descent was caused when the helicopter's tail abruptly clipped a tree. The helicopter crashed and caught fire just over a mile from the wedding location. Those involved in Rosemary's surprise plan started to feel apprehensive as time passed. The wedding coordinator, Carlos Eduardo, who had assisted in planning the flight, called the helicopter company to inquire about its progress. He was informed that the flight had left on time and ought to have reached its destination by now. His concern was heightened by this response, which led him to attempt speaking with the pilot directly. Not a single call was answered. When the phone rang and no one answered, Carlos and the other organizers frantically looked for other ways to find out where the helicopter was. Employees of the company also made unsuccessful attempts to contact the pilot. Meanwhile, as the guests became aware of Carlos's nervous manner, whispers and concerned looks began to circulate among them. The air became heavy with uneasiness, but nobody wanted to cause alarm. Anxious waiting gave way to growing panic after another 15 minutes. In an attempt to learn whether there had been any reports of an incident in the area, the organizers made the decision to contact the local authorities. At that point, they learned of a helicopter crash near the wedding site, which confirmed their worst suspicions. The fact that it was the same flight that was carrying Rosemary was not confirmed, but the information was enough to chill everyone. Carlos Eduardo confided in the pastor because he wasn't sure how to tell the groom. They went together to Uterly and told him what they knew. A few miles away, there had been a report of a potential helicopter crash. Uterly initially found it difficult to understand. He was unaware that Rosemary would be arriving by helicopter. The pastor kindly clarified that Rosemary had planned a surprise for both him and the guests. However, the words didn't seem to make sense. As the realization dawned, Uterly stood in stunned silence, staring at Carlos Eduardo and the pastor. His surroundings appeared to dim, the noises of the assembly fading into a quiet emptiness. When the gravity of the situation became apparent, everyone's eyes were on him. That helicopter might have contained Rosemary. The ensuing silence seemed to go on forever, and nobody knew how to respond. Reports verified that emergency personnel arrived at the scene of the collision within minutes. At first, there were few specifics as they tried to evaluate the situation. To keep spectators out, police surrounded the area and started their investigation. As news of the crash spread to the wedding location, the guests' anxiety grew more intense by the second, though everyone could feel that the possibility of a positive outcome was dwindling. One of the event organizers suggested waiting for official confirmation before drawing any conclusions. Behind him, the groom could hear whispers among the guests, and he knew that until the specifics were known, no one would tell the truth. Whispers were spreading like wildfire, and the day that was supposed to be a celebration was gradually devolving into chaos. First responders were already working diligently at the crash site, while the guests anxiously waited at the venue. The helicopter had crashed near a highway in a forested area. The fuselage had caught fire upon impact, and the remaining portion of the aircraft was rapidly consumed by the flames. After battling to keep the fire contained, firefighters eventually made it to the wreckage. Those attempting to piece together what had happened were struck with a sense of dread and grief when it became evident that none of the passengers had survived. In order to determine the cause of the collision, police officers started gathering evidence and searching the scene for hints. One officer found a camera that had continued to record even after the impact, and debris was strewn all over a small space. The video might offer important new information about the last few seconds of the flight. However, the cause of the tragedy was still unknown. The hope for a miracle was dashed when the wedding venue received official confirmation of the crash. With a heavy heart, the pastor went to Uderly and delivered the heartbreaking news. The groom's face was marked with pain as he tried to make sense of what he was hearing. Those who were by his side were left in stunned silence, unsure of how to react to such overwhelming grief, as the world seemed to crumble around him in that moment. Unsure of what to say or do, the guests who had come to celebrate love and happiness now stood in stunned silence. The ceremony, which had been eagerly awaited, had instead turned into a scene of shock and grief. What had been supposed to be a lovely day had turned into a sobering reminder of how easily one mistake or unanticipated circumstance could ruin lives and plans in an instant. Brazilian National Civil Aviation Agency investigators started collecting witness statements and analyzing the flight data. Particularly interested were those who had been to the wedding or knew about Rosemere's intentions. In addition to determining the technical causes of the crash, the investigation sought to understand why she chose to arrive at such a high risk. Police and aviation safety specialists carefully inspected the wreckage. Retrieving the flight data and going over recordings that might offer important insights was one of their first tasks. It was crucial to figure out why the helicopter lost control and veered off course. There were several possible causes, including pilot error or mechanical failure, in addition to the possibility of heavy fog and deteriorating weather. The investigation was further complicated by witness statements from people who knew the pilot, Peterson Pinheiro. Pinheiro was a seasoned and well-respected expert who was renowned for managing each flight with care and responsibility. He had years of experience and had flown numerous times in difficult weather conditions. Before taking off, he carefully considered the risks, according to his colleagues. Those who worked with him found the news of the crash even more confusing because of this background. It was difficult for many to accept that he could have made such a serious error, but the facts were still indisputable. The helicopter had clipped a tree and spun out of control in dense fog and rain. In order to ascertain whether there had been a chance for a safe landing, investigators tried to piece together the last moments of the flight. The families of Rosemere and Uderly were left to deal with unspeakable grief while investigators worked at the crash site. Close friends, parents, and siblings found it difficult to believe that this tragedy had truly happened. One of the few people who was aware of Rosemere's intention to arrive by helicopter, her sister, recalled their conversations. The idea of surprising everyone with her entrance had filled Rosemere with excitement and enthusiasm. However, nobody could have predicted that this would be her last flight. Uderly stood by the wedding arch, still reeling from the loss. He witnessed organizers and attendees attempting to console one another, but it did not bring him any comfort. He was troubled by the fact that he had been unaware of Rosemere's surprise. He believed that by failing to protect her, he had let her down. What ought to have been the start of their life together had instead turned into one of his worst memories. Soon after, investigators published an initial report confirming that the weather was a major factor in the collision. Visibility was severely limited due to the thick fog the helicopter had encountered. Pilot Peterson lost control of the aircraft and caused the tragic crash after attempting an emergency landing and clipping a tree with the aircraft's tail. But the inquiry was far from finished. Determining why the pilot was unable to prevent the collision and why the helicopter was flying at such a low altitude was crucial. Experts started analyzing the footage from the camera discovered among the wreckage because it might contain important hints for reconstructing the last moments of the flight. Even though it was painful, this step was essential to comprehending what had transpired in those final moments. An eerie silence descended upon the venue as the guests gradually started to depart. Nobody was strong enough to speak. While Uderly's friends and family provided him with as much support as they could, the organizers worked to coordinate with the local authorities. But everyone was plagued by unanswered questions. Why did this happen? What might have led to such a disastrous result? Rosemere's family was also in shock and finding it difficult to accept what had happened. Her mother, who had always been her staunchest ally, was unable to believe that their morning chat would be their final one. She remembered how excitedly Rosemary had described her plan as a gift from the heavens that would astound everyone. Nobody could have predicted that her dream would become such a nightmare. Soon, fresh worries about the flight's actual safety surfaced. Investigators found that the helicopter lacked charter service authorization. Only private flights were allowed under its license. For what reason had the business consented to supply it for the wedding? Who was in charge of failing to notice the weather? These queries sparked additional research and became the main focus of the study. Some witnesses started to remember that bad weather had been predicted in the days before the wedding. However, these warnings received little attention. These circumstances would have needed to be taken into account by pilot Peterson Pinheiro, who is renowned for his meticulous attention to safety. The flight was nevertheless authorized. Who ultimately decided to go ahead with the flight in spite of the obvious risks was now the focus of the investigation. Uderli was trying to think, and every second of waiting was painful. Rosemary had filled his life with so much warmth and light that he couldn't fathom living without her. It was believed that their journey, which began with timid looks at church, would lead to a happy life together. It felt broken now, like a picture that would never be complete. A thick silence fell over the hall, which had once been intended to reverberate with wedding music and exuberant speeches. All that was audible were quiet sobs, consoling words, and reassuring hugs. Nobody knew how to comfort a man who had just lost everything he held dear, or what to say to Udarli. The helicopter crash that killed Rosemary, her brother Silvano, photographer Nayla, and pilot Peterson left a lasting scar on the hearts of their families and the community at large, even though the investigation went on for weeks. As more information became available, one emotion remained constant among those who knew the victims: a deep sense of injustice and loss. The Brazilian National Civil Aviation Agency finished its report a month after the tragic incident. It was verified that the severe weather and poor visibility were the main causes of the collision. When the helicopter lost control at a low altitude, pilot Peterson Pinheiro was in a dire situation after trying to navigate through heavy fog and rain. The collision with a tree, which resulted in the fatal crash, was the crucial moment. Additionally, the report disclosed that Rosemary's helicopter lacked authorization for charter flights. Its registration only allowed for private use, and it was against safety rules to let it be used for a wedding. In addition to drawing attention to the company that rented out the helicopter, this revelation infuriated the relatives of the victims. Subsequent analysis revealed that the helicopter's leasing company had neglected to adequately evaluate the weather and permitted the flight to continue in spite of warnings of poor visibility. After the investigation was finished, the company and its owners were the target of multiple lawsuits because this was considered a serious breach. The relatives of the victims wanted to know why the flight had been authorized in these circumstances and who was responsible for the cancellation. The pilot independently assessed that the flight could be conducted safely, according to the helicopter company. More investigation was necessary, though, after it was discovered that the business lacked permission to use the aircraft for commercial purposes. Their licenses were temporarily suspended as a result, and a thorough audit of their business practices was conducted. The families of Rosemary and the other victims got ready for the funerals while the investigation continued. None of them wanted to confront that moment. Seeing dreams dashed is one thing, but accepting the loss of loved ones is quite another. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects at the solemn funeral. Tears and silence conveyed more than words could ever convey. Unable to express his sorrow, Uderli stood by Rosemary's coffin. His spirit appeared hardened by the weight of his grief, and his eyes were hollow. He had dreamed of being with Rosemary all his life, but in a flash everything was different. He thought his heart might burst as he stood in front of her coffin. He was unable to accept that this was really the end and couldn't say goodbye. Following the funeral, Rosemary's friends and family started a campaign to call for more safety regulations in private aviation. They hoped that no one else would ever experience such a terrible loss as a result of carelessness or oversight. This tragedy struck a chord with the public, leading to broad support for more stringent laws and mandatory supervision to guarantee adherence to flight safety standards. Their local church, which they frequently visited, honored Rosemary's memory as well as that of her brother and the other victims. Uderli made the decision to preserve their legacy in spite of his suffering. In order to provide families impacted by comparable tragedies with tools to deal with their loss, he set up a small fund. Investigators published their final report after several months. It verified that bad weather and poor visibility, which caused the loss of control, were the primary causes of the tragedy. The company's failure to appropriately evaluate the risks involved and adhere to appropriate rental procedures was one contributing factor. The company's flight licenses were temporarily revoked and fined until all found flaws were fixed. Even though the investigation yielded a lot of answers, it was unable to restore the lost. Families were compensated, but it didn't make their grief any less painful. It was only a symbolic gesture that Uterly and everyone who knew Rosemere could not reverse. Life gradually returned to normal for most people months after the tragedy, but not for Uterly. The spark that used to light his eyes had vanished, but he still went to work and saw friends. Nothing could fill the void Rosemere's passing left in his heart. He frequently found himself thinking back on their happy times together in the evenings and wishing that day had gone differently. What started out as a dream for an amazing surprise showed how fleeting life is and how one bad choice can alter everything. Tragically, Rosemere's wedding day was not what she had hoped for, but it was still memorable. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. A person's life can be completely transformed by the emotion of love. It can be tender and loving, or it can be hurtful and disappointing. Almost everyone has times in their lives when they meet someone who becomes special to them, but occasionally these relationships don't work out as planned. In this tale, a man and a woman fell in love, but their relationship ended because of a well-publicized investigation. What transpired between them? For what reason were their parents against their relationship? This video will teach you the answers to these questions. I want to start by saying that this is one of the most unbelievable stories I have ever posted on my channel. Why do those who are meant to protect and serve act indifferently? And everyone will be shocked by this story's conclusion. We will therefore talk about what happened in Kemerovo, Russia, in 2020. The administrative hub of the Kemerovo Oblast is the sizable Russian city of Kemerovo. It is located in western Siberia's southern region. It is one of the biggest cities in Siberia, with a population of over 500,000. On September 24, 1997, Vera Pehteleva was born in Kishtym, Kemerovo Oblast. She developed into a happy, imaginative adult. She won first place in several competitions because she loved singing while studying in school. Despite their divorce while she was in school, Vera's parents, Oksana and Yevgeny, remained friendly. Vera got along well with her mother's new husband and her father's new wife. She was characterized as a non-confrontational, upbeat, and kind individual. Vera's mother, Oksana, lived in Kiselyausk, about 110 miles from Kemerovo, and Vera visited her mother whenever she had free time. As I mentioned earlier, Vera was a creative person, so her family was taken aback when she moved to Kemerovo after high school and enrolled in the State Technical University rather than pursuing a creative career. Vera met a man her own age, Vladislav Kanyas, during one of these trips in 2016. Vera was nothing like Vlad, as everyone called him. He was reclusive, irritable, and lacked life goals. Vlad was raised in a dysfunctional household and left school after the 9th grade. He lived with his father after his mother abandoned her family. But the challenges in his life did not stop there. In the end, his father committed suicide as a result of his legal troubles. Vlad was profoundly affected by everything that transpired in front of his eyes. Vera fell in love with Vlad despite the fact that they had little in common. Vera's parents opposed this relationship because they were aware of Vlad's identity. Although we sympathized with the man and understood that his life wasn't easy, we wanted Vera to have an entirely different life. We didn't agree with her decision. According to her mother, Oksana, we waited for her to break up with him. Vera's father requested that they break up after learning about Vlad. But Vlad and his daughter remained together. She simply ceased discussing him with her parents. Vlad never showed up for our family get-togethers. The pictures on Vera's social media accounts did not feature him. She seemed to be concealing him, Vera's mother recalled. It's important to note that in 2019, Vera and Vlad moved to Kemerovo to live together. Vlad, who was unemployed and did not want to change that, loved living with Vera, and her parents helped pay for the apartment. She always had some cash in her wallet and was intelligent and attractive. She gave him financial support. The couple's relationship was strained. It was obvious that Vlad would not stop abusing alcohol. In November 2019, Vlad allegedly beat her, according to her parents. When Vera finally made the decision to end this toxic relationship, her boyfriend was adamantly against it. As previously stated, Vera's parents assisted her in paying for the apartment where she and Vlad resided. Since Vera ended their relationship in November 2019, it stands to reason that Vlad ought to have moved out, but he refused to do so. He enjoyed living at the expense of others. This is a passage from Vlad's testimony. It will help you understand what transpired after Vera made the decision to break up with him. However, keep in mind that this is Vlad's testimony. Whether or not you believe what he says in his testimony is up to you. I got into a fight with Vera on December 15, 2019, he said. I wanted to go to a nightclub, but she said no, so we got into a fight. Vera started traveling frequently to Kislyovsk during our time together. Slowly, she started to distance herself from me. She informed me that she was speaking to someone else. Remember that. Vera had told Vlad she was ending their relationship a month prior, he went on. Our mutual friend also told me that she was seeing someone else. According to her, Vera was seeing Alexander, a man from Kislyovsk. I was not personally acquainted with him. I wanted to speak with Vera after finding out that she was seeing Alexander. During this period, we remained in the same apartment. Following our argument on December 15, 2019, she departed and took a few items with her. At the same time, I kept calling her to stay in contact. I offered to assist Vera in moving her remaining possessions to a different apartment when I called her on January 12, 2020. I offered to meet and move things, and Vera accepted. I would assist her with the move, we decided. We decided to meet in the afternoon on January 13. I was supposed to get her belongings. Vera approached me on January 13, 2020, at approximately 4 or 6 o'clock. I wanted to leave this apartment as well, so when she arrived, we packed our belongings. Without Vera, I didn't want to live there. We consumed beer, liqueur, and vodka while packing. Then I was intoxicated and Vera was intoxicated too. On January 14, 2020, we drank alcohol until 5 in the morning. We had no arguments while we were drinking, but when I brought up our relationship and suggested that we get back together, I revealed that I knew she was seeing another man, which caused a rift between us. It was not to her liking. She then began to curse, insult me, and hit me. Specifically, she kicked me at least 5 times in the groin and struck me in the face with her palm at least 8 times. When she slapped me, I felt no pain. Vera began hitting me first, but I felt physical pain when she kicked me between the legs. It infuriated me. She lied and claimed she wasn't seeing another man at the same time, which infuriated me. Vera kept insulting me, saying that I was intruding on her personal life because I was aware of every detail about her at the time. Vlad told the police that version of events. We'll talk about the opposing viewpoint next, which provides compelling evidence that Vlad was dishonest in his testimony. Take note of this phrase. On January 14, 2020, we drank alcohol until 5 in the morning. We did not argue while doing so. Vera had no intention of sharing the apartment with Vlad, much less partaking in alcohol. She requested a friend's assistance with the move. Vera left a voicemail for her friend at 5:08 p.m., stating that she was already in the apartment packing up her belongings. At around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, she promised to be at her new apartment. Vera requested assistance from a friend to move her belongings from the taxi to the apartment. Vera left another voicemail 3 minutes later. She asked her friend to assist her with the move by coming to the apartment where she and Vlad shared. But before Vera could finish, Vlad interrupted, saying, "No one's coming in here," and he objected to Vera's friend entering the apartment. 4 minutes later, at 5:15 p.m., Vera asked her friend to come in a low voice, suggesting that things had gotten out of hand. This message appears to have been a request for assistance. She purposefully spoke quietly so Vlad wouldn't hear her. Vera leaves another voicemail at 5:25 p.m., and Vlad's commanding voice can be heard once more. He advises Vera's friend to wait for Vera to text her and not to bother them. Vlad himself recorded the voicemail at 7:19 p.m. Vera was unable to use her phone from that point on. The monster and she were left alone, but we must explain what happened next. A witness described the horrific screams coming from apartment 738 as a massacre, and at around 3 in the morning, the neighbors on the same floor began to wake up. 15 people gathered in the hallway outside the apartment because the screams were so loud. Among them was Vlad's brother. Since his brother had previously threatened to kill Vera, he recalled Vlad's words and understood that they would have to smash down the door. Since the apartment's door was iron, the neighbors began searching for instruments to pry it open. People called the emergency service, and these calls eventually became part of a separate investigation, all the while hearing Vera's heartbreaking cries coming from the apartment. The police were still nowhere to be found 30 minutes later. During the 3.5 hours it lasted until 6:30 a.m., people called the police, but nobody arrived to help Vera. While Vera was fighting for her life, the witnesses called the emergency services 7 times, but no one answered. Vlad was the last person to speak to them from behind the door. "Forgive me, Vera," he said. "You have my undying love." Ultimately, the neighbors broke down the door using a crowbar they found in a nearby parking lot. Vlad was in the restroom by now, and Vera was already dead. He was inebriated. While Vera was suffering a terrible death at the hands of her ex-boyfriend, and the neighbors were futilely attempting to contact the police for assistance. Operators were drinking tea, laughing, and discussing life in 112, and they were quite upset about being bothered. It was only after Vera's death that the police showed up. They will later allege that one car ran out of gas and that no officers were available because everyone was attending to other calls. Consequently, the police officers who were on duty that evening and the 112 operators were also put on trial. The police station video was released while the investigation was underway, but translating it into English is pointless. I can sum it up in one word: indifference, and even without subtitles, it's obvious. Recall that Vlad stated in his testimony that he and Vera had no disputes until 5 in the morning, but the forensic analysis revealed that he had lied. 6 hours prior to her demise, Vera sustained her initial injuries, at around midnight, that is. It indicated that she had been beaten and injured by Vlad Kanyas for 6 hours prior to her passing. Her nose and ribs were broken, and she had approximately 100 injuries total, including stab wounds. Additionally, there were marks from strangulation on her neck. If you were surprised by the police's lack of action, prepare yourself. You won't believe what happened next. Over 1,000 people showed up for Vera Pehtelev's funeral, and the church was unable to accommodate them all. According to Oksana, Vera's mother, the funeral home tried to restore her daughter's face with makeup for 4 hours, but she was still unable to identify her. Her injuries were that severe. Vlad Kanyas was telling the investigators in the meantime his account of events. Naturally, he made an effort to minimize his involvement in this crime. He said as much about that evening. "I told her I knew she was seeing another guy and suggested we get back together when I first started talking to her about our relationship. We began to argue. It was not to her liking. She then began hitting me, insulting me, and using profanity. In particular, she struck me in the face with her palm at least 8 times and kicked me at least 5 times in the groin. When she slapped me, I felt no pain. Vera began hitting me first, but I felt physical pain when she kicked me between the legs. It infuriated me. She lied and claimed she wasn't seeing anyone else, which infuriated me. Vera also claimed that since I was well versed in her personal life, I was intruding on her privacy. She persisted in insulting me during this time. So I became enraged and struck her multiple times with my palms, roughly 4 times on the head, though the blows were not very strong. Vera fell to the ground and struck the closet when I struck her. On her stomach, she lay. She struck me back too. Specifically, she used her fists and palms to beat my head. It hurt. She didn't stop even after I told her to. She scratched my back, I recall. I then made the decision to grab her by the neck. On the floor, I noticed an iron. After grabbing this iron, I wrapped Vera's neck with the iron cord. Then I pulled the cord a little tighter around her neck. For 1.5 or 2 minutes, I squeezed her neck. I didn't want to kill Vera at the time, and I was unaware that my actions could do so. I wanted to frighten Vera, so I was pulling the cord tighter around her neck. My goal was for her to faint. I hoped she would go to sleep. After I took the cord off her neck, she began coughing and wheezing for 15 minutes. When I took Vera's neck cord off, I placed her on her back. After she had been in the prone position, she was unconscious at the time. She wheezed and made noises at the same time. She seemed fine to me. I eventually began rousing Vera, but she was not responding. I then began to hear if her heart was pounding. I listened to her mouth and then her heart. Her heart wasn't beating. She was not breathing. I can't recall what came next. I recall that I eventually found myself in the restroom. I was holding a knife at the same time. I wanted to injure myself, so I brought a knife. I knew Vera was dead, and I didn't want to kill her, so I didn't want to live. After a while, my brother and a policeman entered the apartment through the open door. I was then instructed to put on my clothes. The police station is where I was taken. I apologize for my actions. I don't deny that Vera died as a result of what I did. I had no desire to murder her. I would like to express my regret to Vera's family. Vlad has a selective memory, as you have observed. He recalled strangling Vera, but he couldn't recall how he hurt her roughly 100 times. Vera was lying on her stomach on the floor during the interrogation, and it was unclear how she could have scratched his back and punched him in the face. It also became evident how Vlad's brother got to the crime scene. He lived in a different city, after all. This is what Vlad said to the police. I called my brother and informed him of the situation. My brother advised me to call an ambulance and perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation on Vera. After I informed him that she was not breathing, I attempted to administer first aid to her. I attempted to massage her heart and perform CPR. He called his brother around midnight and threatened to kill Vera, according to information uncovered during the investigation. When questioned again about Vera's injuries during the second interrogation, he said, "It was probably me who caused those injuries to Vera. Although I didn't keep track of how many blows I delivered, the expert discovered some injuries on Vera's body that might have been my fault. I can't recall how many times I struck her, but I believe it was the same amount as the expert suggested. I acknowledge that I caused her every injury listed in the report. I desired quiet. I didn't consider how she was suffering. During our argument, she yelled at me and insulted me. When I struck her, I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy her yelling. I wished she would stop talking. At the time, I didn't consider her suffering. Additionally, Vlad Canius claimed that he and Vera were intimate by consent. Since it was impossible to prove the opposite, the charges pertaining to this were ultimately dropped that evening. Emergency service operators and police officers were charged with negligence. It's difficult to accept, but throughout the investigation, they continued to give ludicrous justifications for their actions, and no one suspended them from their jobs. For each of the 5 defendants, the prosecutors sought actual prison sentences, but the judge made a different decision. They were given suspended sentences ranging from 1.5 to 2 years. Additionally, the court mandated that each give the victims roughly $350. The police department also had to pay about $11,000 at the same time. Although the ruble is the currency of Russia, I have converted all amounts to US dollars. The indictment claims that the police officers had gasoline, and even if they didn't, they should have taken the proper action to address the situation. However, they did not view going to the scene as an urgent task, so everyone can understand these numbers. According to them, neither police officer admitted guilt and refused to assist with the investigation. The investigation team was at another address where the man's body had been discovered earlier, when witnesses called to report the woman's screams and cries for assistance. Vera had no intention of staying in the apartment that night, so we'll probably never find out what actually transpired. She even asked a friend to assist her in moving. Thus, there is every reason to believe that Vlad poured alcohol into Vera's mouth while she was unconscious, or forced her to drink it. He had time to devise a story that would demonstrate that everything that occurred was accidental. Vlad Canius was given a 17-year prison sentence by the court in the summer of 2022. He partially acknowledged his guilt. Additionally, he was mandated to make a compensation payment of roughly $45,000. Vera's parents were shocked by what transpired next, since they felt that 17 years was a very light sentence for what Canius had done to their daughter. They intended to appeal the decision. But Vlad was not even imprisoned for a year. Pictures of Canus in uniform were broadcast on the network in November 2023, and it was revealed in April 2023 that he had been pardoned by the president following 6 months of involvement in the war. He was also released from the duty to compensate Vera's parents in any way, and you are all aware of the type of conflict Russia is currently embroiled in. In Russia, the case of Vera Pehteleva has generated a lot of interest. Not less poignant was the news of Vlad Canus's pardon. This is what the Russian president's press secretary had to say about it. Pardoning follows a specific process, which we have discussed on numerous occasions. The convicted individual should first confess his guilt before the documents are sent to the president for review. This decision is made at the level of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, followed by the regional level, the federal district, the Central Commission, and finally the president. This is one method. Another is for prisoners, including those incarcerated for major offenses, to atone for their crimes with blood on the battlefield. Blood under shells and bullets was how they atoned for their sins. When Vera's parents found out that the person who killed their daughter was free and could start over, it's difficult to imagine how they felt. Such a chance will never come to their daughter. She was denied another chance. And that wraps up today's chilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Also, let me know in the comments, what part of this story shocked you the most? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.